reporting that there's been discretion that Republicans should hold less town halls. I mean, do you think that that's what your members should be doing? Do you think that they should be?
Well, look, we've been encouraging our members to communicate directly with their constituents, and they're anxious to do that. There's lots of different ways and forums to do it. You could do it in telephone town halls. You can have small subgroups of people from different industries and segments of the community. We find that to be very, very productive, and more productive than if you just go to an open forum right now. Why? Because we've seen this movie before. George Soros-funded groups and others literally pay protesters, and I saw my friend Hakeem Jeffries decrying that I've said that, but we know that that is a fact. Democrat activists who don't live in the district very often will show up for these town hall events, and they'll go in an hour early and they'll fill all the seats, and so the constituents and the people from the community that are actually represented don't even get a seat. Now, I'm not saying everyone in these, all the Democrats in these town halls that you've seen on television were not from the local area, but look, there are people who do this as a profession. They're professional protesters. So why would we give them a forum to do that right now? The best thing that our members can do is communicate directly, frequently, consistently with their constituents, and there are other avenues to do it than just going in to try to give the other side sound bites. I mean, they're doing this for the cameras, we all know it, and I think it's wise not to play into it right now. So that's my position. Yes?
Speaker, would you have preferred, or should Secretary Rubio have gone through the Congress on the $3 billion arms sales announced to Israel over the weekend? And what do you hope to hear from President Trump tonight on what's next for Gaza?
Well, I think we'll have some important information on that tonight. From my perspective, what is happening at the Secretary of State, Department of Defense, and of course all through the White House is well within the President's authority. They have discretion on some of these funds and how to use them. There's been consternation about the announcement that they would pause military aid to Ukraine, and I had a few people ask me this morning, well, don't you think that's a violation of separation of powers or something? It's not. The President has authority to do that, to act as the Commander-in-Chief, to use the strategy that he and his team believe is best fit for that. It's not changing or redirecting something that Congress did, unlike the Biden administration. You remember with Israel, he was basically redirecting whole categories of, for example, armaments and bombs that Congress had duly enacted, had voted to send to Israel. They were trying to redirect and hold it in perpetuity. This is different. A temporary pause, I think, is a strategic move by the Commander-in-Chief, and we support that. And so we'll see. I think there'll be more information about it tonight and in the days ahead, and we'll see how it develops.
Mr. Speaker, if you're moving ahead with a clean CR at current spending levels, does that mean that Congress will be funding programs that may have been eliminated or frozen? And if so, how do you intend to address that?
Yeah, so a clean CR allows us to avoid a government shutdown, which isn't good for anyone, while the DOGE effort continues, and it's really critical work, finding fraud, waste, and abuse throughout the government. So what the DOGE effort will do is prepare recommendations for FY26. We have to get FY25 done. We will not be funding fraud, waste, and abuse that's already been discovered. As soon as that is qualified and quantified, okay, it will be codified in that sequence. And what that means is we have a deadline of March 14. We don't have time to calculate all the things in major categories to work in an appropriations process in that amount of time. So what will happen is in a clean CR requested and supported by the President and all of us, we will fund the government responsibly, and at OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, and in the White House, they will not direct funds to these categories of things that have been shown to be abusive. What will happen on the back end, is the way the procedure works, is that we'll be able to go back later and do rescissions and handle it in other ways. The big savings that DOGE is finding, and I'm very excited about this. I've been meeting with Elon Musk about it regularly. We talk about it often. That will be a part of FY26. We're going to get back to regular order, restore the process. We'll get a budget from the White House that reflects all of those savings, because there'll be time to calculate it and do that. And then we will begin the appropriations process for FY26. I think it's going to be a very exciting development, because we're going to do it differently than it's been done in years. We'll have whole categories, big savings, I believe, that will change the equation. And it's going to be a great thing for the American people.
Last question, on Ukraine. There are major tariffs that have obviously going into place today. Lots of concerns from the business community, from Americans. What is your message to those who are very worried that we could be at the start of a long and painful trade war?
Well, look, I don't think anybody envisions a trade war or looks forward to that, but I do think President Trump makes a great point. I've always thought of myself, I came up as a Reagan Republican, and we believe in free markets and free trade. And the president was really ahead of his time. Back in 2015, 2016, when he first began to run for president, he would often correct us. He'd say, yes, free trade, but fair trade. And he made a great point. I mean, a lot of people had blinders on. There was all these countries around the world that have taken advantage of America. The America First agenda is to reset those relationships. And his idea of reciprocal tariffs policies is actually really comports with common sense. I mean, if we have a country that we have a huge trade imbalance with because they're charging 100% tariff on imports from the U.S., well, then we need to bring that down. How do we bring it down? By giving them a dose of their own medicine. Now, this is not an adversarial thing. This is to continue good relationships and trade policy. So I think this initiative will achieve that desired result. My suspicion is if there's a country that's charging us hypothetically 100% tariffs on imports and we do the same, they will begin to lower those import tariffs pretty quickly. And you will get back to a point of equilibrium that does resemble free trade again. I think that's good for the American people and for our country. And as the president said, just have a little patience with this. Let it play out, see how it develops, and I think at the end of the day, America's going to be better off. American consumers, American families, and all of us as a nation and as a people. So we support it, and we'll see what happens, and thank you all for being here this morning. Thank you.
All right, that was House Republicans speaking right ahead of President Trump's big address to Congress. So when we come back, we will hear from House Democrats, and then we will be very close to our 8 p.m. Eastern hour as we get you ready for the big speech by President Trump to Congress. Coming up in just moments. We're back here for you on Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Mike Page. As we get closer to our special coverage of President Trump's address to Congress, our coverage kicking off at 8 p.m. Eastern. So coming up here in about 13 minutes, we will have you covered all right here on Live Now from Fox. All right. You're ready here as we are looking at some of the inside shots of the Capitol. You see a lot of the media members there right now getting ready for their live hits, and we'll have more coverage for you coming up in just moments on Live Now from Fox. In the meantime, do want to play out some of the remarks from House Democrats as they were speaking ahead of President Trump as well.
Not how we should treat federal employees, not how we should treat any American. And this is what Donald Trump did to her. and he's done that to a large number of federal employees. And if you look at the federal workforce, about 1 in 4 are veterans. This is not how they should be treated. And most of these actions are simply brazenly illegal. We have a number of court cases being filed. We're winning a number of those cases. Others are going to go into litigation. And I call on the administration to stop illegally firing our veterans and other federal employees. I also now want to touch on the subject of tariffs. You've seen with the indiscriminate tariffs that the president has both imposed and threatened to impose, that not only is the stock market tanking, but also inflation is up, consumer sentiment is down, and Atlanta Fed has now predicted that we're going to contract this quarter in terms of GDP. That is shocking, and that is all because of the actions of one person, the president, who is massively harming our economy. And then I'd like to conclude now on Ukraine. I don't know why Donald Trump is scared of Putin. He clearly is. He acts like he's scared of Putin. And right now, with his pause in funding to Ukraine, I just want to let the Ukrainians know to please hang in there. The president of the United States cannot extend that pause because it would be illegal. Congress, on a bipartisan basis, appropriated that funding to Ukraine. Ukraine is going to get that funding. And with that, I'd like to introduce our amazing representative from Austin, Texas, Greg Casar. He has done a fantastic job as leader of the Congressional Progressive Caucus.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Lieu and Chairman Aguilar. I also want to thank New Dems Chairman Brad Schneider, who I'm proud to call a partner in the fight to protect Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and the American people. Tonight, millions of Americans will tune in to watch the president address a joint session of Congress. I do not know what Trump will say, but I can guarantee you that he is going to lie to the American people and not tell them the truth about what MAGA Republicans in Congress want to do to you right now. So let me say it clearly. Whatever political games that Donald Trump plays tonight, whatever lies he tells and whatever show he puts on, people watching at home should know that Trump and House Republicans want to steal your health care, steal your taxpayer money, and hand it over to their billionaire buddies and to their donors. In Congress, Republicans are advancing a budget that would end Medicaid as we know it. And Elon Musk is trying to cut your Medicare and your Social Security. Social Security that seniors earned throughout their lifetime is what Elon Musk just recently called a quote-unquote Ponzi scheme. I'll say it again. Elon Musk just called Social Security, quote, the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time, end quote. That's right. A guy that makes $8 million per day from federal government contracts thinks that seniors getting $65 a day from Social Security is a quote-unquote Ponzi scheme. Their plan is plain and simple. Guys like Elon Musk get richer, and you get screwed. But here's the good news. Democrats are united and fighting back to protect your Social Security, your Medicare, and your Medicaid. New Democrats, Congressional Progressive Caucus Democrats, the two biggest ideological caucuses here in the Congress, have put out a joint letter that includes 100% of our members from our two coalitions saying we will not vote to cut your Medicare, your Medicaid, and your Social Security. Over 200 House Democrats showed just in a matter of days that we are united with the American people in this fight. So while we may not all agree on every single issue, we are saying with one voice, hands off Medicare, hands off Medicaid, and hands off of Americans' Social Security. So now the question becomes, will any three House Republicans grow a background? Will any three House Republicans do the right thing and act like U.S. representatives instead of like Trump employees and join us? Because if three congressional House Republicans join together with Democrats to do the right thing, there will be no Social Security cuts. We can prevent cuts to Medicaid and Medicare and to Social Security. But if House Republicans choose instead unanimously to come after Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare, then they will own the terrible consequences for working people. Thank you so much.
House Democrats continue to speak ahead of President Trump's address to Congress. And a live look right now at Capitol Hill. Soon we will see movements from President Trump leaving the White House in about 35 minutes. So we'll keep an eye on everything that is happening out in D.C. We'll take one more break here on Live Now from Fox. Stay right here with us. We'll be back in just moments. Welcome back, everyone, to Live Now from Fox. Well, the stage is set for President Trump's address to Congress. Our special coverage starting here in just moments. My colleagues Andrew Kraft, Christina Evans, and Austin Westfall will be with you this evening, bringing you the coverage. We'll be showing it to you from beginning all the way to the end, only that you can expect right here on Live Now from Fox, with then additional coverage on the back end there of that major speech. Well, President Trump's team already putting this out on social media just moments ago. They are asking their followers and supporters, do you have your popcorn ready? And then they put out this, what seems to be like a movie trailer ahead of the big speech. Let's listen in.
Tonight, history is made. The joint address to Congress, live. President Trump delivers the vision for America's future, from a booming economy to bold foreign policy to securing our borders. What's next for the nation? It's a moment of truth. How will America rise in 2025? You won't want to miss this. Join us for a night that will define our future. It's more than just words. It's action. President Donald J. Trump, tonight.
All right, that being put out by the Trump War Room on X. All right, that is going to do it for my time here on the desk, but the rest of the team is ready to get you into that special coverage tonight of President Trump's address to Congress. In the meantime, do you want to play out just a little bit more of House Democrats speaking ahead of the president?
And his wealthy billionaire friends. And they're putting the burden for all of this on our seniors, our children, our first responders, on people who educate our children, build our houses, work on the factory floor, who take care of our communities and tend to us when we are sick. It is these hardworking people who are on the crosshairs of the Republicans' actions. One of these people is my guest tonight. Adam Mulvey is a 20-year Army veteran who served 3 tours in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and 1 in Afghanistan. He's one of 6,000 of these veterans we talked about who was fired between February 13th and 24th. He worked at Lovell Federal Health Care Center. James A. Lovell Center is the only hospital in our country that serves both veterans and active military and every one of those recruits I just mentioned. His job was to help provide emergency management services, planning and preparing in the case of a tornado or another emergency or even an active shooter. He served 35,000 veterans in our area, tens of thousands of active duty sailors and other military members, and the 40 to 50,000 people each year who go through Naval Station Great Lakes. We all believe government should be efficient, but Trump and Musk are taking a sledgehammer to Americans' lives and our livelihoods. And I am proud to stand with all of my colleagues here today saying it has to stop. Thank you, and I am proud to yield back to Chairman Aguilar.
Thank you, Brad. Take some questions. Nick?
Republicans are teeing up a year-long, or at least through the end of the fiscal year, continuing resolution that could come as soon as this weekend. Is this something that Democrats would support?
Well, let's be very clear about kind of the facts, but also about kind of where this process is. Democrats do not have the ability to shut down government. Republicans have the votes. They demonstrated that last week when they went after health care and Medicaid for American families. They have the votes. They have the responsibility to govern. But let's talk about the process. Rosa DeLauro has submitted an offer to Republicans. They walked away. Speaker Johnson has said that he wants the CR to be bipartisan. There has been no outreach from the administration or the Speaker to Leader Jeffries. So that's where things stand. Republicans have walked away, and Republicans have the votes. Then they have demonstrated time and time again that with their unity, they can go after health care and programs that we feel are important to the American people.
How would you gauge the effects on the public if the government were to shut down? What would be the level of suffering?
Donald Trump shut down.
All right, let's step away there from some of these House Democrats speaking earlier today. I want to welcome everyone in. I'm Andrew Kraft, thanking my colleague, Mike Page, for guiding you through the last couple of hours on this pretty busy Tuesday. It's going to be a busy Tuesday night as we, in this 1 hour before President Trump set to take the dais there in the House chamber, will address a joint session of Congress. So in this hour, we're going to be previewing what that speech might say. We're going to be bringing in reporters and analysts and experts who cover the White House and Washington each and every day to talk about some of the issues that we have seen playing out in the very short time that President Trump has been in office now a second time. So this will be his first time addressing a joint session of Congress since returning to the White House. And so we have you covered here on Live Now from Fox. Let's just show you what I have in store at my disposal. Of course, we always have our live picture there. Outside the U.S. Capitol, and it's always fun, once we see the president's motorcade, we'll show you the motorcade en route from the White House to the Capitol. We also have a live picture there inside the Capitol as well. Take a look at that. So that is in Statuary Hall right now. And you see there reporters trying to get any House or Senate members to comment about what they might think the speech has in store there. So I'm going to be kind of pointing out some of these figures, doing the best I can, because it's always fun to see who's there and who's not there. And in the meantime, we do have just some basic facts, because we do want to go back in time just a little bit here to President Trump's first speech to a joint session of Congress. I want to put this up. The date was February 28, 2017. Lasted about an hour, and it was the last time Republicans had unified control of government, meaning both the House and the Senate and the White House. Speaker Ryan, Paul Ryan at the time, of course, Vice President Mike Pence, and President Donald Trump. Now, that was back in 2017, about 8 years ago. The Democratic response was given by former Kentucky Governor Steve Beshear, at the time current Kentucky Governor, father of current Kentucky Governor right now, Andy Beshear. So wanted just to kind of set the stage there and take stock of some of the context. And in that 8 years, boy, has the world changed. Boy, has the country changed as well. And we'll be diving into so much of some of those changes here throughout the course of the night. Of course, the issues will be front and center, and we want to hear from you about those specific issues. We're about to pose you a question in just a moment. What do you want President Trump to highlight, to touch on throughout the course of his speech tonight? And so we'll pose that question to you in just a moment here. And remember, we do have some of our reporters standing by there on Capitol Hill, including Fox 5 DC's Tom Fitzgerald and Fox's Caroline Shively. Well, we'll have all of that in store. Well, speaking of that very question, let's pose it to you right now. And we want to hear from you, like we do sometimes. This is the question. Which issue would you like President Trump to focus on tonight? The tariffs that were put in place at midnight last night on Canada, Mexico, and China. Is that what you want to hear about? Or the war in Ukraine? Of course, we brought you the news of the United States pausing all military aid to Ukraine, as we heard from Volodymyr Zelensky just today, the Ukrainian leader, that he wants to revisit, restart the communication with the Trump White House after that Oval Office meeting just last Friday went so awry. Or is it border security? As we have brought you some of these stories about how ICE has conducted illegal immigration enforcement, deportation, and some of those actions in the almost 2 months that Trump has been in the White House. Remember, border crossings, illegal border crossings are now down. Or is it the Doge cuts? As Elon Musk and his team there at Doge continue to find ways to cut waste, fraud, and abuse within the federal government. And that has been a very controversial pledge and mission by Doge. We know that many federal workers have been laid off, but remember, they were opposed to buyout early on in the Trump administration. Remember, some of those federal workers had that deadline to accept the deferred resignation, and some of them took that. We know that. In the meantime here, you can scan that QR code, or you can visit the website there, the URL, livenowfox.com/connect. Some of you are already voting. So we got about 27% of you want to hear about tariffs. The majority of you want to hear about the Doge cuts, around 40% hovering there. Third, some of you want to hear about the war in Ukraine and how the president is working toward ending that war with Ukraine and Russia. Over 1,000 of you have already voted who are watching right now. We thank you. Lastly, though, coming in fourth, border security, hovering around 12% there. We're going to keep this up just a tad longer. We want to pose this question to you, and I would imagine we are going to be hearing a lot about all four of these issues throughout the course of the night. So if we do get any excerpts out there reported on of the president's address tonight, we'll bring you that as well. Haven't seen those just yet. That is sometimes customary before these big speeches. Haven't seen that just yet, though. In the meantime here, okay, more of you have voted. Now 3,000 plus of you have voted. So we thank you. We thank you for choosing Live Now as your go-to source for all of the live, raw, and uninterrupted news each and every day. And we're going to do the same there tonight in Washington, on Capitol Hill, in the House chamber, where members of both the Senate and the House, members of President Trump's cabinet, members of the Supreme Court will be filing in there to the House chamber very, very soon. So in the meantime, like I said, I'm Andrew Kraft. We're just getting started. Let's take our first commercial break. When we come back, we're going out to Capitol Hill live. We'll have more from Capitol Hill when we come back. And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for choosing Live Now as your go-to source for everything tonight for President Trump's first speech to a joint session of Congress in his second term since returning to office. We want to go out now live to the Capitol. That's where we find our friend Fox News' Caroline Shively with what's in store tonight, a preview. She joins me. Caroline, good to see you here. Who have you spoken with and what have you learned tonight?
We've learned a bit more about the speech, Andrew, coming amidst all of these controversies, from the DOGE cuts to the fight with President Volodymyr Zelensky, on down to this tariff war that is now brewing. These controversies are coming amidst a huge joint session of Congress, but President Trump says he plans to tell it like it is. It's been 5 years since Donald Trump last addressed a joint session of Congress. And unlike in 2020, Republicans say the president's speech will stay in one piece.
We will not be ripping up the speech tonight. I would like to frame it in gilded gold.
The White House says the theme for tonight is the renewal of the American dream. The president is expected to tout his administration's accomplishments so far and outline plans for peace around the world. He will also push a Republican-controlled Congress to pass more border security funding.
Border numbers are down 97%, more than twice as many as Biden did in his administration. We're hitting on all cylinders, but we need more money to do more.
Trump is expected to address his plan to lower prices just as a trade war heats up with Canada, Mexico, and China. Democrats warn Trump's tariffs that took effect today could send prices even higher.
He has said one thing and done the other. Tonight will be no different.
Some Democrats are boycotting the speech. Others are bringing federal workers as guests, as the president is expected to highlight his administration's efforts to cut government spending.
They didn't get a notice saying you didn't do this, you can improve this way, that way. They're just fired. It's cruel, it's heartless, it's nasty.
The Democratic response tonight is set to be delivered by freshman Senator Elissa Slotkin of Michigan. That is a critical swing state that both she and President Trump won just last year. Andrew?
You know, Caroline, I was somewhat expecting excerpts of the speech to be released at some point. We haven't seen those, have we?
We haven't seen those so far. In years past from other administrations, including the first Trump administration, you've seen some of those excerpts, some of the tone that we are expected. President Trump certainly likes a surprise during some of these. We do know that we expect to see Elon Musk here. We expect to see other guests in the First Lady's box. So the tone is supposed to be the renewal of America. We are expecting perhaps an aggressive tone that we have seen from this president, with also some highlights, some moments highlighting what he considers to be some of the accomplishments of his first 6 weeks in office.
All right, Caroline Shively there live for us on Capitol Hill. Caroline, good to see you. Thanks so much.
You bet.
All right, in the meantime here, we do want to keep it moving. Just want to put this up for you, yet another kind of full screen, that's what we call it, of just some of these facts since Donald Trump has been in office now for his second term, non-consecutively. So remember, the last time we really heard from President Trump in such a venue this large, talking about the Capitol, was January 20th, 2025, when he was sworn in as the 47th president. And remember, it hasn't even been a full 2 months since then, so there's only been 43 days in office. But the Trump administration has been quite busy. 76 executive orders signed in that 43 days. Also, 20 of 22 cabinet positions already confirmed. So quite a fast pace when it comes to these cabinet confirmations. Of course, you know that the president had his first cabinet meeting just last week. Now, remember, we're still waiting for Congresswoman Elise Stefanik to be confirmed to be the next UN ambassador, and also former Congresswoman Lori Chavez de Reymer. Remember, that is Trump's pick to be labor secretary, and the confirmation vote has not taken place just yet for that role. Also, remember, deportations of undocumented migrants in just the first month. This is according to DHS and ICE. 37,600. Remember, on the campaign trail, President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance had said as much, that they plan to deport everyone who has been here illegally, upwards of 11 to 12 to 13 million people. But in the first month there, you see the number. Now, remember, the economy, tariffs, that will be presumably a key focal point in this speech tonight, in these remarks tonight. Remember, though, in January, inflation ticked up ever so slightly, back to 3%. Of course, the cost of eggs is a key concern for probably a lot of you watching, and probably a lot of you watching are wondering, well, how will tariffs either add to some of these inflationary concerns or not? We've been talking about economists, or two economists rather, about that key issue for some time here. We do have some of these live pictures, though, inside the Capitol. Let's take them. Okay, so also I wanted to put this up from the House Freedom Caucus, and this is their warning to some of their fellow colleagues on the other side of the aisle, House Democrats, and they say this in this post on X today, a warning from the HFC board, that's the House Freedom Caucus, saying this: the president's address tonight's joint session of Congress is a constitutional obligation, not a sideshow for Democrats to use noisemakers, make threats, or throw things, or otherwise disrupt. They say our colleagues are on notice that the heckler's veto will not be tolerated. They say you will be censured. We expect the Sergeant at Arms and Capitol Police to take appropriate action against any members of Congress or other persons violating House rules. So we have seen that in the past for some of these remarks, and historically, they are usually part of what we're all talking about the next day if there are disruptions that are made from some of these members who are seated for the speech itself here. In the meantime, though, we do want to keep it moving with some more of our analysis and context as we await for this speech to begin. And that, of course, we're going to do that with our friend there at the Washington Examiner who covers the White House each and every day, reporter Christian Daytok. He joins us. Christian, good to see you. We've relied on you so heavily in the past, 43 days? We just showed that. There's only been 43 days of this administration so far, and some viewers might be wondering, well, why this moment? Why so little into the second term? Are we going to hear from the president about some of these perceived accomplishments and victories when he hasn't been there that long?
Well, he hasn't been there that long, Andrew, but this is typical for new presidents. Of course, the State of the Union itself is usually delivered in February or March. President Biden delayed that a few times, speaking in early April on occasion. But this is just, par for the course, essentially. It does seem early, considering that President Trump's major economic initiatives have yet to necessarily take light. Obviously, the tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and increased levies on China went into effect on Tuesday, but we still haven't seen any real movement regarding his planned tax cuts. Of course, Republicans are working up against a March 14th deadline to fund the government and advance those tax cuts pursuant to the appropriations process. So I think Americans across the political spectrum are anxious to hear from the president now, especially considering those first early few weeks in office where he was signing executive order after executive order. They haven't really necessarily had an impact on everyday Americans' pocketbooks and, like you mentioned, the price of eggs and other important goods.
So we have a live look there inside the Capitol. Christian, how much is this speech tonight imbued with the urgency of congressional leaders getting together before this March 14th deadline? That's in 10 days. Before government funding runs out. Has the Trump White House been front and center on that, or are they letting Congress do its thing? Really, time is of the essence, and it's running out.
Time is of the essence, Andrew, but the White House is being an active party in these negotiations. Don't forget, before the House passed its own appropriations bill a few days ago, if not, early last week, the chief of staff, Susie Wiles, had been up on the Hill meeting with legislators. Again, she joined Senate Republicans' lunch late last week to urge them to rapidly pick up the House's version of that legislation. And I do think, it's an issue that's at the front of mind, not only for us here in D.C., but everyone across the country, as the president continues this quest to shrink the federal workforce, remanage the federal budget. This is all related, and it's going to be a major speed bump if the government shuts down in his early days and weeks of trying to address that major campaign promise.
You're right. There would be some type of halting of the brakes effect if that were to happen here. Let's talk about tariffs, Christian. Is the Trump White House already hedging on the tariffs just put into place at midnight on Canada, Mexico, and China here? Canada and Mexico to the tune of 25% on all goods. Is there room for negotiation, interpretation with our Canadian, Mexican allies on this? I think I had asked you last time we spoke about this. Are these tariffs permanent or are these tariffs temporary? Does the president need to explain to the American people why he did this today?
Look, with the tariffs regarding Canada, Mexico, and China, there's plenty of room for negotiation because if you ask the president's top aides, this is fundamentally not about addressing trade deficits. This is all about, the border situation, both the northern and southern, and the illicit flow of fentanyl and other drugs into the country. The president himself gave an idea that, look, he is willing to roll these tariffs back should all three of those party countries make substantive progress on the issue. We did see progress at the border, but the flow of fentanyl has gone on virtually unchecked, and therefore the president put those tariffs into place heading into this morning. That being said, Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary and one of the top trade advisors in the Trump administration, he went on Fox Business earlier today and said, hey, we might be making an announcement tomorrow, Wednesday of some kind, rolling these taxes back to some degree. I think part of that has to do with the negative sentiment that they're being received with, especially in Canada. We saw outgoing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau give a very fiery response to the implementation of tariffs earlier today. And let's not forget the havoc this agenda is having on the stock market. We saw, 2 consecutive days of major losses posted across all of the big three indexes here in the United States. We do know that Donald Trump, unlike other presidents, pays close attention to the stock market as one of his major economic temperature checks or barometers, if you will. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some amendments on those 25% tariffs later this week, if possible.
The Wall Street Journal has it to what you were referring to, that Commerce Secretary Lutnick said President Trump will meet in the middle with Mexico and Canada after 25% tariffs on America's continental neighbors went into effect on Tuesday there. And so we'll just have to wait and see because there are some congressional Republicans, no doubt, who are a little wary about this, who are a little wary about whether or not the tariffs will be inherently inflationary. But you have some in the Trump White House, right, Christian, saying any effects will be in the short term. And so they want to see the long game with these tariffs here. Let's talk about another topic here. A lot of the special guests from some of these Democratic members of the House and Senate, Christian, are some of these federal workers who no longer have a job via some of these DOGE cuts. Does President Trump need to explain what DOGE is up to in this speech tonight?
I think he definitely does, Andrew, because we've seen a number of these guests include combat veterans who worked for the federal government for varying periods of time, and they were wrapped up in those initial cuts that the Trump administration has laid out in these first early weeks. A lot of them, I would have to imagine, voted for President Trump, either in this election or perhaps in past elections. And so, look, I think the realization that just because you supported one president and that president is making it his first and foremost mission to cut as many jobs as possible while keeping the government up and operational, that's a reality that didn't quite hit home until some of these folks received those pink slips, right? So again, we heard Alina Habba speak on this at the White House, and her explanation didn't really give any comfort to people who lost their jobs. She essentially said, look, the Trump administration, we care about our veterans, but these people just might not have been right for government work at this time. I'm paraphrasing to a degree, but it does still sound like a glib explanation for someone who's dealing with a major life upending development here in this very tumultuous time.
Yeah, so we'll just have to see on that front how that is addressed. We also have some of these congressional leaders. Let's take this full here. The House Majority Leader, Steve Scalise, and he was wearing kind of a green and purple tie today, hailing, of course, as he does from Louisiana. Today is Mardi Gras, so I thought that was kind of a nice sartorial touch there. Christian, let's talk about some of these foreign policy questions We heard in a lengthy post today from Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, and he says this: Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible to bring lasting peace closer. He said our meeting in Washington at the White House on Friday did not go the way it was supposed to be. This news coming after yesterday's news that the Trump administration is temporarily pausing all U.S. military aid to Ukraine. So is this a contrite Zelensky? Has Zelensky realized that you can't just cut off the Trump administration? The two sides can't just be incommunicado, so to speak. They have to be communicating here. Is that what we're seeing from Zelensky today?
There's no way to necessarily gauge just how contrite President Zelensky was in that social media apology, just based on the punitive actions the Trump administration has already taken following that Friday meeting. But look, the understanding of everyone who was at the White House on Friday was that Ukrainians will do whatever it takes to re-enter these negotiations with the White House. I think the most interesting development is actually one we got from our own side of this debate, and it involves President Trump potentially announcing an agreement on the resources deal that was scuttled following that Oval Office dust-up between himself, Zelensky, and Vice President J.D. Vance. Now, there are conflicting reports coming out of the White House and coming out of the Trump administration. Some people say that President Trump wants to tout this as a huge win, not only in terms of his economic agenda, but also as his prowess as a peacemaker or a great unifier. That being said, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent virtually came out and said, look, these reports are not true. We have not reached a final agreement with the Ukrainians, and there will be no such announcement during the president's speech tonight. So it's certainly going to be a popcorn moment that we in the media are looking for. Is this deal finalized, or do still, additional reconciliation attempts need to be made on both sides before the I's can be dotted and the T's can be crossed on this new economic partnership?
All right, we have a lot of these Trump cabinet secretaries. They're walking into the House chamber. The Interior Secretary, former North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum there. Christian, just lastly, I wanted to ask, because you've been around the Trump world, the Trump orbit for quite some time covering it. And I have to say, the juxtaposition between the Trump transition 1.0 and the Trump transition 2.0, the first couple of weeks of Trump 1.0, the first couple of weeks of Trump 2.0, drastically different as far as cabinet confirmations, the streamlining, the rapidity with which a lot of this stuff has gotten done. And you can make the argument this time the adults are in the room. They know what they're doing. Have you noticed that change in the nature of the operation of this Trump White House? And I also have to add, too, remember in Trump 1.0, the intrigue, kind of the scandal, the leaking in so much of that Trump White House. You're not seeing much of that right now, are you?
You really are not, Andrew. And to be quite honest, President Trump's first 6 weeks in office, give or take a few days, it's been 43 days into the Trump administration, and I'm having trouble keeping track of my calendar. But I think that went about as well as it could have been hoped for by any of the president's supporters. You mentioned that first transition. I think you have to look at the people who Donald Trump brought in around him to staff that first White House. Of course, there were some quote unquote MAGA figures like Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, but the majority of Trump's senior leadership team were still establishment Republicans. And while they might have been experienced, they clearly, as we saw in the ensuing years, were not gung-ho, down with the cause when it comes to the president's America First agenda, which, let's not forget, was vastly different than what we saw most centrist Republicans talking about at the time. You flash forward to 2025, the Trump White House is now in office, and it looks like they really put those last 4 years under President Biden to good use. They were able to identify thousands of quote unquote loyal political appointees with which they could enter the administration quickly and hit the ground running. Yeah. And again, just the lessons learned by this Trump White House in terms of managing the media, managing the president's own emotions, and keeping him on task and on schedule when it comes to policy announcements. I think that really has been a drastic change. And, to be quite frank, Friday the blow up with Zelensky in the Oval Office, that was the only negative day that the Trump administration has seen from an operational standpoint, at least. And I'm curious to see if they'll be able to pick up the momentum that they left off after the president's speech later tonight.
All right, Christian Daytok there at the Washington Examiner. You cover all things there at the White House. We appreciate your reporting and your insight, Christian. Have a good night.
Thanks, Andrew.
All right, in the meantime here, we do have a live picture there outside of the White House as we are being told that the president will be departing momentarily. We have not seen him just yet there in this shot, so I'm loath to go to commercial. Let's just keep on that shot right there. We do have our colleagues there at Fox 5 DC, Tom Fitzgerald standing by. We'll bring in Tom in just a moment. We don't want to miss this shot there of the president, and I would presume the First Lady, about to leave the White House for the Capitol. Of course, it's not that far of a drive there in the presidential motorcade. So this is going to be happening any moment here. So we're going to stay on this in lieu of going to commercial break. Let's listen. Oh, you see there Elon Musk. Okay, there you have it, the president and the first lady. The president with his signature fist bump there as he is now in the beast. In the meantime here, we're going to keep this shot, though. We do have on standby for us, Fox 5 DC reporter there, our friend Tom Fitzgerald. He is in the Capitol for everything. We're going to keep the shot there. We'll bring in Tom in just a moment. Tom, good to see you. Good to be with you here. We're watching President Trump right now and the First Lady there in the motorcade depart the White House for Capitol Hill. And so, Tom, what do you got your eye on tonight here? Remember, we've been kind of reiterating the point. Trump's only been in office for 43 days. It's been a busy 43 days. What's he going to talk about tonight?
Well, often these kinds of speeches are referred to as State of the Union. This is not a State of the Union tonight, in large part because, right now, one of the stalwart moments in a State of the Union speech is when a president says the state of our union is strong. Everything that the Trump administration has been doing over the past 42 days now has been because they believe that the State of the Union was not strong. When President Trump took the oath of office back on January 20th, tonight, in large measure, from what we have heard as guidance from the White House this evening, is going to be an explanation to the American people as to why all of these methods that they've been going about over the past, 3 months now are necessary. This is going to be a voice of confidence, not only to the Republican majorities in both the House and Senate, but also in large part, when you give one of these speeches, you're not just talking to the Congress of the United States, you're talking to the American people as well, too. So one of the things we'll see from the president tonight is an explanation of what it is he's doing, and even in short term, what the benefit all of this is that the administration says that they have been able to achieve. Now, one of the things the White House is saying is that they've been able to identify $65 billion, they say, in savings just through DOGE. Now, that's not only the layoffs and the furloughs of, federal employees, but this is also what they say, the elimination of unnecessary programs, things like leases on federal buildings that are not being used. Now, how do they come to that number? That's a good question. The White House says that they are going to be very transparent about this, and they're going to create a website where people can go to and actually itemize and see number by number exactly where all these savings from. There's also going to be a lot of talk tonight about what is going on right now with this trade war, which has broken out not only between the United States, Canada, and Mexico, but as China as well. This is laying to a lot of concerns with people about what direction the economy will head in the wake of all of this. Obviously, one of the things the president campaigned on was grocery prices. In fact, famously now said that he would get grocery prices under control on day one. That hasn't happened. How much of this can they continue to, point at the previous administration, which really, the underpinnings of the Biden administration fell apart on the economy. The Trump administration at some point is going to begin to own that, so they are going to have to address this in the speech tonight because, time and time again, when pollsters ask people what they're concerned about, it is the high cost of living right now, and especially at the grocery store. It's not only eggs, it's things like coffee, other household goods. And remember, this ties in with the trade argument right now because, about half of all U.S. produce imports come from Mexico. With a 25% tariff on that, about 90% of all avocados that come into this country come from Mexico. Yeah. So there is almost going to be an immediate shockwave coming in, through the supermarket for people on this lot of stuff. Andrew, you're also going to hear about the efforts on cracking down on illegal immigration in this country, and also the president is going to talk about the latest moves on Ukraine and why he has, mounted this more aggressive stance on Ukraine. Peace is the ultimate goal, the administration says, and even today, the president said he is still interested in a rare earth minerals deal with Ukraine. He believes this is a doorway to get both sides to stop this war, and he said ultimately that is the goal, despite, all the flurry of activity on Friday with that scene in the Oval Office, Andrew.
And of course, the Trump administration, in the form of Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, seems to be throwing some cold water on this report in Reuters today that minerals deal would be signed at the speech itself. Bessent saying that's not going to happen here. Tom, the president makes news almost wherever he goes. Do you think any news is going to be made? There's been a lot already made in these 40-plus days. How can he get through tonight, so to speak?
Well, I mean, the president makes news anytime he takes the podium of the House of Representatives for a joint session like this. One of the remarkable things I don't think we've, talked about a lot is how early in this administration a address like this is. Typically a president would wait to the end of his 100 days. Andrew, we're not even at 50 days right now before, the president of the United States is taking this bully pulpit tonight. It is a bit of a risk, because they are still rolling out initiatives and plans day by day. Just a couple of hours ago, Washington, D.C. was kind of rocked when a list came out from the General Services Administration, which is kind of the real estate arm of the federal government. Well, at one point, there were 400 buildings that were listed on this website tonight, saying that these were properties that were no longer of use to the federal government. One of them was the Department of Justice on Pennsylvania Avenue. Now, a short time later, that list was revised. DOJ disappeared from that list, but, one of the other properties on it was the old post office building, which one time served as the old Trump Hotel. So, there's a lot going on. This is rapid motion in Washington, D.C. It is very likely that the president will go off script at some point tonight. The White House still hasn't released, a verbatim as to what the president is exactly going to say, a copy of his speech just yet. We haven't even gotten excerpts of this tonight, but all I can tell you is after, years of covering the president's speeches, he does tend to go off script at times and say things that, maybe even a surprise to his own staff. So, that is one of the surprises you always get when President Trump speaks steps to the microphone. You never really quite know what he's going to say, Andrew.
All right, and Tom, we just saw Vice President Vance and some of these members of the Senate walk in, both Republicans.
Just walked in front of me here.
And Democrats. Oh, yeah, they walked in front of you. So, Tom, for those who aren't familiar of the Capitol geography, where are you in relation to all this?
Well, where we are right now, we are in Statuary Hall. Statuary Hall is just outside the door of the House of Representatives. At one time, this was the House of Representatives. The wings of the building that currently house the United States Senate and the House of Representatives, well, they were created and built during the Civil War in 1865. So prior to 1865, right where we're standing right now, this is where the House of Representatives was located. You know, young congressmen like Abraham Lincoln, they occupied this room. They had their desks a few feet away from where I'm standing right now. There are actually brass plaques in the floor, Andrew, of every congressman who later went on to be president, embedded in the marble floor in here. You know, there had been famous scenes throughout history. There was a caning that took place during a debate about slavery at one point. So a lot of history in this room. It's one of the most famous spots in town. But it is the very oldest part of this Capitol building. It was the first part of the wing that actually opened up when it finally was built.
All right, Tom Fitzgerald. We could talk all day about American history. We always appreciate you, Tom. Have a good night.
Good to talk to you, Andrew. Take care.
All right, in the meantime here, we do want to step away for yet another quick commercial break, though. When we come back, we'll be showing you some of these scenes both inside and outside the Capitol. As we now know, Vice President Vance is in the chamber. The President and the First Lady have departed from the White House to Capitol Hill. And so we'll be monitoring all of this when we come back. We'll also be checking in with my colleagues, Austin Westfall and Christina Evans, here in the Live Now newsroom. More to come in 2 minutes. And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Thanks so much for being with us here. All right, we finally have a live picture inside the House chamber. Let's take it there. You see Vice President Vance meeting with some of the members of Congress there. A lot of senators behind him. There's Senate Majority Leader John Thune there. Also, you see there members of the armed forces. That was another, remember, controversial move by President Trump and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. Relieving of command General C.Q. Brown as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs for their chosen pick, retired Lieutenant General Kane. And so that was somewhat of a controversial decision here. We're going to get back to that in just a minute. I want to introduce my colleagues here in the Live Now newsroom and the Live Now social media room as well. They're going to be guiding us through all of tonight with all the reaction as well. Austin Westfall, Christina Evans, thanks so much for being with us here. Christina, we will start with you. You have a lot in store once the speech wraps, but you're all over social media right now. What are they saying?
As you know, they're starting with so much is already going on as folks are leading into this speech. I want to show folks, though, mainly kind of the setup that we have back here in the social studio as well. Behind me, you can see how all of these comments are already filtering in on X. That's our main source tonight because it's an easier way for people to communicate. But we also have access to Instagram and other social media sites so that way we don't miss any reactions or as people are gearing up for tonight's speech, the comments that they want to make as well. So in a few minutes, I'll be able to break down a little bit more about what we're seeing already. But just know that both Republicans and Democrats, they've been waiting for this moment. They're excited to sort of see what's going to be happening and listening in to hear those comments from President Trump as he addresses this joint session of Congress.
All right, Christina, thanks so much. We'll be checking in with her after the speech wraps as well. We also have this live picture there, up there at the dais, Vice President Vance, Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. And so let's just listen to this a little bit here. We're going to bring in my colleague, Austin Westfall, Elon Musk, the head of Doge, up in the gallery as well here. So this is shaping up to be quite a night. We're going to be showing you these live scenes throughout the course of the evening here. In the meantime, though, like I said, Austin Westfall joining me here in the Live Now newsroom. Austin, take it away. What are we watching?
Well, the picture is starting to fill in. This is what we're going to be seeing for the rest of the night. The Vice President and the Speaker of the House, they speak and they stand behind the President while he speaks. There's Tom Homan. That's President Trump's border czar watching there as we see. There's Josh Hawley and Bernie Sanders. And we'll be watching closely to see how the Senate, how all of these elected officials react to Trump's remarks. Obviously, we'll see half of the room applaud for lots of these things, while the other half of the room does the exact opposite. We're seeing Ted Cruz there. If I'm not mistaken, that's Representative Nancy Mace out of South Carolina that he's speaking with. So we're starting to see some more. Is that Ben Shapiro, I think? Ben Shapiro in attendance at this speech to a joint session of Congress. So we're going to be watching as more and more people start flowing in to the House floor.
Well, Austin, to your point, those were guests of the House Speaker, Mike Johnson. He announced that the Daily Wire's Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh will be his guests in attendance. There's the former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. Looks like they are talking to Rachel Campos Duffy, the wife of the Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy. You also saw there sitting with Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh, Riley Gaines, who has been a key and prominent feature of this Trump White House, at least culturally speaking, and she has been championing the cause, her cause celeb there, of keeping biological men out of women's sports. Of course, the former Speaker of the House there, Nancy Pelosi, with the former House Majority Leader, Steny Hoyer there. Austin, I want to bring you on cam, though, because I think a lot of people are asking themselves this question. This is not a State of the Union. This is a speech to a joint session of Congress. What's the difference?
Not a lot. There's not a big difference. So the big difference is that they do this the first time a president speaks during, and you can see the differences there on your screen. Here's what we hear in the Constitution. This is how it's printed. The president shall from time to time give the Congress information of the State of the Union and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. The joint address to Congress is the tradition beginning with President Ronald Reagan in 1981. This inauguration year speech, generally delivered in February, is not officially considered a State of the Union address. So if I was going to put this in layman's terms for the audience, just from the outside looking in, there's not a whole lot of difference. Really just the naming of this thing. Still, we're going to expect to see President Trump speak about his agenda. He's not going to be talking about the past year's worth of work that the White House has done. That's something that's going to distinguish this type of speech to a normal State of the Union. So, you know, as we start to look at more and more of these people flooding in, something that I'm going to be keeping my eye on during the actual speech, Andrew, is the reactions from the crowd. There's always theatrics at these events. In fact, I think it was an Axios report that said the Democrats were floating the idea of bringing props to Trump's speech, including anti-Trump signs, egg cartons to highlight the current costs of eggs, pocket constitutions to protest Doge. and then people bringing hand clappers as well. So we'll wait and see what kind of theatrics happen aside from the main speech.
So the camera panning there up to the dais in the House chamber. It does appear that some of these, at least Democratic women, are wearing pink, and we'll get the significance of that, hopefully, from some of them. But to your point, the difference between a State of the Union and just a joint speech to Congress, the State of the Union, that's in the Constitution. It's written in there. This is much more traditional, and that tradition is very recent. It started with President Reagan here. And so we do have, finally, some excerpts from the speech itself. I had been kind of wondering where those were. I'm going to read some of them here. I'm going to read the first paragraph that the Trump White House put out, and it goes as follows. Trump will say this: 6 weeks ago, I stood beneath the dome of this Capitol and proclaimed the dawn of the golden age of America. He will say, from that moment on, it has been nothing but swift and unrelenting action to usher in the greatest and most successful era in the history of our country. Trump will say, we have accomplished more in 43 days than most administrations accomplished in 4 years or 8 years, and we are just getting started. Trump will say, I return to this chamber tonight to report that America's momentum is back, our spirit is back, our pride is back, our confidence is back. And the American dream is surging, bigger and better than ever before. The American dream is unstoppable, and our country is on the verge of a comeback, the likes of which the world has never witnessed and perhaps will never witness again. So just wanted to highlight yet another paragraph of some of these excerpts of the speech we have gotten. We also see members there, Austin, of President Trump's family. You see his daughter Tiffany there, her husband. You also see his daughter Ivanka and his son-in-law Jared, the Kushners, and Donald Trump Jr. as well. Now, Austin, you know, each and every speech like this, there's somewhat of a fun parlor game that the government plays for the sake of the continuity of government. It's important, and we're learning which cabinet member that is going to be. The designated survivor. Politico reporting here. I want to put this up. What do we know about this? They say this.
Doug Collins is going to be the designated survivor. So you might wonder, what is the designated survivor? Maybe you didn't watch the show that was on TV, the dramatic depiction of what a designated survivor is. We're just finding this out now. And usually we don't find out who the designated survivor is until either just before a speech like this or during the speech. So Doug Collins will be the guy tonight. Collins is the Secretary of Veteran Affairs. Usually it is somebody from the cabinet that's picked for this. And the reason why Politico phrases it that way, Andrew, is because if the unthinkable happens, in other words, if by some catastrophe, everybody within this chamber were to not be able to hold office anymore, they would need one person outside of this building to be able to carry on the duties of the country. Doug Collins has been selected as the designated survivor for today. The designated survivor needs to meet a few requirements. They must be at least 35 years old. They must be a natural-born citizen. All of Trump's cabinet members meet this requirement. So Doug Collins, and you know what? Let's listen in.
Session will come to order. The chair appoints as members of the committee on the part of the House to escort the President of the United States into the chamber the following. The gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Scalise. The gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Emmer. The gentlewoman from Michigan, Mrs. McClain. The gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Hudson. The gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Reschenthaler. The gentleman from Utah, Mr. Moore. The gentlewoman from Indiana, Mrs. Houchin. The gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Hearn. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Jeffries. The gentlewoman from Massachusetts, Ms. Clark. The gentleman from California, Mr. Aguilar. The gentleman from California, Mr. Liu. The gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Neguse. The gentlewoman from Washington, Ms. Delbene. The gentlewoman from Michigan, Mrs. Dingell.
The President of the Senate, at the direction of that body, appoints the following senators as members of the committee on the part of the Senate to escort the President of the United States into the House chamber. The Senator from South Dakota, Mr. Thune. The Senator from Wyoming, Mr. Barrasso. The Senator from Arkansas, Mr. Cotton. The Senator from Oklahoma, Mr. Lankford. The Senator from West Virginia, Mrs. Capito. The Senator from South Carolina, Mr. Scott. The Senator from New York, Mr. Schumer. The senator from Illinois, Mr. Durbin. The senator from Minnesota, Ms. Klobuchar. The senator from New Jersey, Mr. Booker. The senator from Wisconsin, Ms. Baldwin.
The members of the escort committee will exit the chamber through the lobby doors.
All right, so you just heard the House Speaker there announce the escort committee, the members of Congress who will escort the president there into the House chamber. We have some of them here. Let's take this. Let's listen.
Mr. Speaker, the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps.
Jonathan Jackson. There. The penguin doesn't look. The penguin doesn't. Did he dress us up okay? My wife loves this bracelet. I hate it. I don't wear it because she doesn't wear it. It's just on TV. I'm a blazer.
All right, so you've been listening there to the natural sound on the House floor, the Speaker and the Vice President chatting away there. Austin Westfall still with me here in the Live Now newsroom. And we saw members of the Diplomatic Corps. Of course, we know that a lot of the picks that Trump has made to be ambassadors around the world, they are subject to Senate confirmation. We have not gotten their confirmations just yet, although most of the president's cabinet, Austin, has been Senate confirmed. We're still waiting for 2 members. That's Elise Stefanik there. She's going to the UN upon Senate confirmation. And Lori Chavez-DeRemer, a former congresswoman herself, like Stefanik, going to the Labor Department. That confirmation hearing still to be scheduled here. All right, we have some more of these dignitaries coming into the chamber. Let's keep listening. Okay, so we were just watching there members of the Supreme Court come into the chamber. Austin Westfall, that's always a key feature of any presidency is can and should a president appoint members of the Supreme Court if such a vacancy should arrive there. Of course, we know in Trump's first term, Austin, he got 3 Supreme Court vacancies here. We'll have to just wait and see whether or not he gets any in this second term.
We will. And you know what we'll be watching for tonight? And I was speaking with some folks earlier today, and there were a lot of things that people are going to be watching for tonight. As we just saw some of the justices arrive, I think we noticed that a few of them were not there. Justice Sotomayor did not appear to be in. And did we see any others missing? Ketanji Brown Jackson appeared to not be in attendance as well. So believe we saw 7 out of the 9 justices, at least from that vantage point. We'll wait to see if we can perhaps hear of any statements from either of those two as to why they are not in attendance today. But of course, there's a handful of things that are on people's minds. I mean, there's an infinite amount of things that the president can talk about during this speech. But Andrew, I mean, what you and I have been covering these past few days so closely has been the Russia-Ukraine war, that contentious meeting between Vladimir Zelensky and President Trump and J.D. Vance in the Oval Office, tariffs and high prices. That's something that we'll wait and see how Trump discusses that in his speech tonight. We heard of retaliatory tariffs that are going to be implemented from Mexico, Canada, and China. Of course, at midnight this past midnight, just overnight here, we heard of the next round of tariffs coming into China, and then a 25% tax on imports from Canada and Mexico. So all 3 of those nations have announced retaliatory efforts. We'll see if Trump has a response to those retaliations. We're going to be talking about the shrinking government and Elon Musk, Andrew. I mean, that's something we're going to be watching for a lot. I mean, we had that poll up earlier today. We were asking the folks at home what they're most interested in hearing about tonight, and the Department of Government Efficiency is topping our poll. People want to know about DOGE. They want to know how DOGE is going to work and what DOGE has planned for the incoming year.
Yeah, that's right. Austin, sorry to interrupt there. We do have, remember, some of these excerpts of the president's remarks. He will address the tariff question. He will also address the high cost of eggs. He will say this in some of these remarks. He says, as you know, we inherited from the last administration an economic catastrophe and an inflation nightmare. He will say their policies drove up energy prices, pushed up the cost of groceries, and drove the necessities of life out of reach for millions of Americans. He will say we suffered the worst inflation in 48 years, or perhaps even in the history of our country. He will say, as president, I am fighting every day to reverse this damage and make America affordable again here. So to your point, the economy will be front and center. While we have this lull here, I think it's just worth putting this up yet again, Austin. Our poll question to so many of you watching, around 14,000 of you have already chimed in. The question we posed was, which issue would you like the president to focus on tonight? Tariffs, the war in Ukraine, border security, or DOGE cuts? And an overwhelming number of you, more than half, want DOGE cuts front and center. Of course, Austin, Elon Musk is in the chamber. So please vote even more. You can scan that QR code or visit that URL there. Let's get back out to the chamber, Austin.
So, you know, one thing I wanted to mention, you might have noticed on the screen that we saw a number of elected leaders wearing pink. We're getting told that Democratic representatives are telling Time magazine pink is intended to signal protest of, quote, Trump's policies, which are negatively impacting women and families. So if you see a large group of folks wearing pink, it's a protest. Let's talk about something that we're going to be following closely. Oh, and you know what? One more thing in the crowd to watch for. I read that Senator Bernie Moreno out of Ohio will be handing out U.S. flags to Republican senators ahead of President Trump's speech. So it's very possible we'll see a number of American flags waving in the crowd when we see these applause breaks during the speech itself. After the speech, Andrew, the big talker is going to be the Democrats' rebuttal. We're going to be listening for Elissa Slotkin. She's the senator out of Michigan. You see some pink there. So again, we're hearing that that's an act of protest. And
well, I was going to say, you mentioned that in that piece in Axios, Austin, that some of these Democrats will bring props, so to speak, to make their opinions heard. The House Freedom Caucus, remember, we were hearing from the chairman there, says that if there are any disruptions or interruptions or outbursts, that they will work to censure any of those Democrats there. And we have the First Lady, it looks like.
Yes, and I'll read a little bit more of what we heard from Axios. Democrats were floating the idea of bringing props to Trump's speech, including anti-Trump signs, egg cartons to highlight the current costs of eggs, as well as pocket constitutions as the First Lady enters the chamber to an applause.
Speaker, the President's Cabinet.
That's true. I should have done way
Secretary, can't wait to connect with you. We have so much fun.
All right, so the members of the president's cabinet, the majority of them that have already been Senate confirmed, of course, coming into the chamber, and you saw many of them there. Austin Westfall is still with me here in the Live Now newsroom. Austin, not many of the Supreme Court justices, to your point.
We did see a number of them enter the chamber. We are hearing from the Hill that 4 Supreme Court justices are not in attendance. That includes Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito. They have not attended these speeches in more than a decade. Also passing are Justices Sonia Sotomayor and Neil Gorsuch. So Beyond the 4 sitting justices in attendance today, retired Justice Anthony Kennedy is also in the chamber, according to The Hill. So it should be any moment now, Andrew. We've just watched the president's cabinet enter the room. We see the VP and the Speaker of the House sitting there, and we will watch them over Trump's shoulder as he gives this address. There's Tulsi Gabbard and Chip Roy. Keep playing a game of RFK Jr. And we're going to continue watching as this group mingles together until we eventually hear the president announced. And then he will flood through the chamber. He'll shake a lot of hands. That's right. And the speech will get underway.
Yeah, this is going to be the last time you see Austin and myself on camera. We just want to let these scenes breathe there on the House floor. We'll have a lot of reaction, a lot of analysis after the speech itself. We've been reading to you some of the excerpts of what President Trump is going to say there. Back out live on the House floor, we brought you also the news that VA Secretary Doug Collins will be the designated survivor tonight. We've been talking about the issues in this last hour of what the president might touch on and highlight. And remember, just 43 days in office there in his second term, his non-consecutive term. And Austin, you and I were discussing the inauguration and the run-up to that. That's really the last time we've heard from President Trump, at least in this building right here that was in the Capitol Rotunda, because it was just too cold, remember, to have the inauguration outside. It was somewhat packed in there, hundreds of people in the rotunda, and now you're watching these scenes on the House floor, and many of the cabinet secretaries, they are in the building too.
We don't know how long this speech is going to last. And I should mention, too, that don't go anywhere after the speech is over, because we're not only hearing from President Trump tonight. After a speech to a joint session of Congress like this, the opposing party gives their rebuttal to what the president says. So in this case, Democratic Senator Elissa Slotkin out of Michigan. She's been selected as the up-and-comer who will be giving the televised rebuttal. Again, we don't know exactly when that's going to happen. We just go with the flow. As soon as Trump ends his speech, we will be watching for Slotkin. That will be televised. Usually, they give this type of duty to a young up-and-comer within the party. We have heard that top Democrats, including Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, have said that Slotkin's reputation and skills have been commendable. Schumer also called her a rising star in the party. Jeffries says that she will, quote, deliver a comprehensive and clear-eyed response to the issues, including cost of living, Social Security, and Medicaid. She, as you see on your screen there, was a U.S. representative in Michigan for 6 years. She just won out and won her Senate seat from, she beat out Mike Rogers in this past election cycle. She's a former CIA analyst and Defense Department official. She was born in New York, and raised in Holly, Michigan. She was called to service, by the way, from the terrorist attacks on September 11th. On Slotkin's second day of graduate school in New York City, it drove her career toward national security, and now she will be delivering the Democratic rebuttal, Andrew, to tonight's speech.
Yeah, that's right. Just getting to the Senate. She's only been there a couple of months. Remember the outgoing retiring Senator, Debbie Stabenow. That was her seat. Slotkin beat Rogers for it. Remember, there's going to be an open Senate seat in Michigan in 2026 as well, Austin. And we'll see if Rogers takes another crack at it there with outgoing Senator Gary Peters. In the meantime here, you're still watching the House floor. We are waiting for President Trump's arrival into the chamber. Everyone seems to be set in place now. You're about to listen to the Sergeant at Arms there, and here we go.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a great honor. Thank you very much. Speaker Johnson, Vice President Vance, the First Lady of the United States, members of the United States Congress, thank you very much. And to my fellow citizens, America is back. 6 weeks ago, I stood beneath the dome of this Capitol and proclaimed the dawn of the golden age of America. From that moment on, it has been nothing but swift and unrelenting action to usher in the greatest and most successful era in the history of our country. We have accomplished more in 43 days than most administrations accomplished in 4 years or 8 years, and we are just getting started. I return to this chamber tonight to report that America's momentum is back, our spirit is back, our pride is back, our confidence is back, and the American dream is surging bigger and better than ever before. The American dream is unstoppable, and our country is on the verge of a comeback, the likes of which the world has never witnessed and perhaps will never witness again. There's never been anything like it. The presidential election of November 5th was a mandate like has not been seen in many decades. We won all 7 swing states, giving us an electoral college victory of 312 votes. We won the popular vote by big numbers and won counties in our country. And won counties in our country, 2,700 to 525, on a map that reads almost completely red for Republican. Now, for the first time in modern history, more Americans believe that our country is headed in the right direction than the wrong direction. In fact, it's an astonishing record, 27-point swing, the most ever. Likewise, Small business optimism saw its single largest one-month gain ever recorded, a 41-point jump.
Members are directed to uphold and maintain decorum in the House and to cease any further disruptions. That's your warning. Members are engaging in willful and continuing breach of decorum, and the chair is prepared to direct the Sergeant-at-Arms to restore order to the joint session. Mr. Green, take your seat. Take your seat, sir. Take your seat. Finding that members continue to engage in willful and concerted disruption of proper decorum, the chair now directs the Sergeant-at-Arms to restore order. Remove this gentleman from the chamber. Members are directed to uphold and maintain decorum in the House. Mr. President, you continue.
Thank you. Over the past 6 weeks, I have signed nearly 100 executive orders and taken more than 400 executive actions, a record to restore common sense, safety, optimism, and wealth all across our wonderful land. The people elected me to do the job, and I'm doing it. In fact, it has been stated by many that the first month of our presidency, it's our presidency, is the most successful in the history of our nation. By many. And what makes it even more impressive is that, do you know who number 2 is? George Washington. How about that? How about that? I don't know about that list, but we'll take it. Within hours of taking the oath of office, I declared a national emergency on our southern border, and I deployed the U.S. military and Border Patrol to repel the invasion of our country. And what a job they've done. As a result, illegal border crossings last month were by far the lowest ever recorded, ever. They heard my words and they chose not to come. Much easier that way. In comparison, under Joe Biden, the worst president in American history, there were hundreds of thousands of illegal crossings a month, and virtually all of them, including murderers, drug dealers, gang members, and people from mental institutions and insane asylums, were released into our country. Who would want to do that? This is my 5th such speech to Congress. And once again, I look at the Democrats in front of me, and I realize there is absolutely nothing I can say to make them happy or to make them stand or smile or applaud. Nothing I can do. I could find a cure to the most devastating disease, a disease that would wipe out entire nations, or announce the answers to the greatest economy in history or the stoppage of crime to the lowest levels ever recorded. And these people sitting right here will not clap, will not stand, and certainly will not cheer for these astronomical achievements. They won't do it, no matter what. Five times I've been up here. It's very sad, and it just shouldn't be this way. So Democrats sitting before me, for just this one night, why not join us in celebrating so many incredible wins for America? For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again. Every day, my administration is fighting to deliver the change America needs to bring a future that America deserves, and we're doing it. This is a time for big dreams and bold action. Upon taking office, I imposed an immediate freeze on all federal hiring, a freeze on all new federal regulations, and a freeze on all foreign aid. I terminated the ridiculous Green New Scam. I withdrew from the unfair Paris Climate Accord, which was costing us trillions of dollars that other countries were not paying. I withdrew from the corrupt World Health Organization. And I also withdrew from the anti-American UN Human Rights Council. We ended all of Biden's environmental restrictions that were making our country far less safe and totally unaffordable. And importantly, we ended the last administration's insane electric vehicle mandate, saving our auto workers and companies from economic destruction. To unshackle our economy, I have directed that for every one new regulation, 10 old regulations must be eliminated, just like I did in my very successful first day. And in that first term, we set records on ending unnecessary rules and regulations like no other president had done before. We ordered all federal workers to return to the office. They will either show up for work in person or be removed from their job. And we've ended weaponized government where, as an example, a sitting president is allowed to viciously prosecute his political opponent, like me. How did that work out? Not too good. Not too good. And I have stopped all government censorship and brought back free speech in America. It's back. And 2 days ago, I signed an order making English the official language of the United States of America. I I renamed the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. And likewise, I renamed, for a great president, William McKinley, Mount McKinley again. Beautiful Alaska. We love Alaska. We've ended the tyranny of so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion policies all across the entire federal government and indeed the private sector and our military. And our country will be woke no longer. We believe that whether you are a doctor, an accountant, a lawyer, or an air traffic controller, you should be hired and promoted based on skill and competence, not race or gender. Very important. You should be hired based on merit. And the Supreme Court, in a brave and very powerful decision, has allowed us to do so. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. We have removed the poison of critical race theory from our public schools, and I signed an order making it the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female. I also signed an executive order to ban men from playing in women's sports. Three years ago, Peyton McNabb was an all-star high school athlete, one of the best, preparing for a future in college sports. But when her girls' volleyball match was invaded by a male, he smashed the ball so hard in Peyton's face, causing traumatic brain injury, partially paralyzing her right side and ending her athletic career. It was a shot like she's never seen before. She's never seen anything like it. Peyton is here tonight in the gallery, and Peyton, from now on, schools will kick the men off the girls' team, or they will lose all federal funding. And if you really want to see numbers, just take a look at what happened in the women's boxing, weightlifting, track and field, swimming, or cycling, where a male recently finished a long-distance race 5 hours and 14 minutes ahead of a woman for a new record by 5 hours. Broke the record by 5 hours. It's demeaning for women, and it's very bad for our country. We're not going to put up with it any longer. What I have just described is only a small fraction of the common sense revolution that is now, because of us, sweeping the entire world. Common sense has become a common theme, and we will never go back. Never. Never going to let that happen. Among my very highest priorities is to rescue our economy and get dramatic and immediate relief to working families. As you know, we inherited from the last administration an economic catastrophe and an inflation nightmare. Their policies drove up energy prices, pushed up grocery costs, and drove the necessities of life out of reach for millions and millions of Americans. They've never had anything like it. We suffered the worst inflation in 48 years, but perhaps even in the history of our country. They're not sure. As president, I'm fighting every day to reverse this damage and make America affordable again. Joe Biden especially let the price of eggs get out of control. The egg price is out of control. And we're working hard to get it back down. Secretary, do a good job on that. You inherited a total mess from the previous administration. Do a good job. A major focus of our fight to defeat inflation is rapidly reducing the cost of energy. The previous administration cut the number of new oil and gas leases by 95%, slowed pipeline construction to a halt, and closed more than 100 power plants. We are opening up many of those power plants right now. And frankly, we have never seen anything like it. That's why on my first day in office, I declared a national energy emergency. As you've heard me say many times, we have more liquid gold under our feet than any nation on earth, and by far. And now I fully authorize the most talented team ever assembled to go and get it. It's called Drill, Baby, Drill. My administration is also working on a gigantic natural gas pipeline in Alaska, among the largest in the world, where Japan, South Korea, and other nations want to be our partner with investments of trillions of dollars each. There's never been anything like that one. It will be truly spectacular. It's all set to go. The permitting is gotten. And later this week, I will also take historic action to dramatically expand production of critical minerals and rare earths here in the USA. To further combat inflation, we will not only be reducing the cost of energy, but will be ending the flagrant waste of taxpayer dollars. And to that end, I have created the brand new Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. Perhaps you've heard of it. Perhaps. Which is headed by Elon Musk, who is in the gallery tonight. Thank you, Elon. He's working very hard. He didn't need this. He didn't need this. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Everybody here, even this side, appreciates it, I believe. They just don't want to admit that. Just listen to some of the appalling waste we have already identified. $22 billion from HHS to provide free housing and cars for illegal aliens. $45 million for diversity, equity, and inclusion scholarships in Burma. $40 million to improve the social and economic inclusion of sedentary migrants. Nobody knows what that is. $8 million to promote LGBTQI+ in the African nation of Lesotho, which nobody has ever heard of. $60 million for indigenous peoples and Afro-Colombian empowerment in Central America. $60 million. $8 million for making mice transgender. This is real. $32 million for a left-wing propaganda operation in Moldova. $10 million for male circumcision in Mozambique. $20 million for the Arab Sesame Street in the Middle East. It's a program. $20 million for a program. $1.9 billion to recently created Decarbonization of Homes Committee, headed up, and we know she's involved. Just at the last moment, the money was passed over by a woman named Stacey Abrams. Have you ever heard of her? A $3.5 million consulting contract for lavish fish monitoring. $1.5 million for voter confidence in Liberia. $14 million for social cohesion in Mali. $59 million for illegal alien hotel rooms in New York City. He's a real estate developer. He's done very well. $250,000 to increase vegan local climate action innovation in Zambia. $42 million for social and behavior change in Uganda. $14 million for improving public procurement in Serbia. $47 million for improving learning outcomes in Asia. Asia's doing very well with learning. We know what we're doing. Should use it ourselves. And $101 million for DEI contracts at the Department of Education. The most ever paid, nothing even like it. Under the Trump administration, all of these scams, and they're far worse, but I didn't think it was appropriate to talk about them. They're so bad. Many more have been found out and exposed and swiftly terminated by a group of very intelligent, mostly young people, headed up by Elon, and we appreciate it. We found hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud. And we've taken back the money and reduced our debt to fight inflation and other things. Taken back a lot of that money. We got it just in time. This is just the beginning. The Government Accountability Office, a federal government office, has estimated annual fraud of over $500 billion in our nation, and we are working very hard to stop it. We're going to. We're also identifying shocking levels of incompetence and probable fraud in the Social Security program for our seniors, and that our seniors and people that we love rely on. Believe it or not, government databases list 4.7 million Social Security members from people aged 100 to 109 years old. It lists 3.6 million people from ages 110 to 119. I don't know any of them. I know some people that are rather elderly, but not quite that elderly. 3.47 million people from ages 120 to 129. 3.9 million people from ages 130 to 139. 3.5 million people from ages 140 to 149. And money is being paid to many of them, and we're searching right now. In fact, Pam, good luck. Good luck. You're going to find it. But a lot of money is paid out to people because it just keeps getting paid and nobody does, and it really hurts Social Security and hurts our country. 1.3 million people from ages 150 to 159, and over 130,000 people, according to the Social Security databases, are age over 160 years old. We have a healthier country than I thought, Bobby. Including, to finish, 1,039 people between the ages of 220 and 229, one person between the age of 240 and 249, and one person is listed at 360 years of age. More than 100 years older than our country. But we're going to find out where that money's going, and it's not going to be pretty. By slashing all of the fraud, waste, and theft we can find, we will defeat inflation, bring down mortgage rates, lower car payments and grocery prices, protect our seniors, and put more money in the pockets of American families. And today, interest rates took a beautiful drop, big, beautiful drop. It's about time. And in the near future, I want to do what has not been done in 24 years, balance the federal budget. We're going to balance it. With that goal in mind, we have developed in great detail what we are calling the Gold Card, which goes on sale very, very soon. For $5 million, we will allow the most successful job-creating people from all over the world to buy a path to U.S. citizenship. It's like the green card, but better and more sophisticated. And these people will have to pay tax in our country. They won't have to pay tax from where they came. The money that they've made, you wouldn't want to do that, but they have to pay tax, create jobs. They'll also be taking people out of colleges and paying for them so that we can keep them in our country instead of having them being forced out. Number one, at the top school, as an example, being forced out and not being allowed to stay and create tremendous numbers of jobs and great success for a company out there. So while we take out the criminals, killers, traffickers, and child predators who are allowed to enter our country under the open border policy of these people, the Democrats, the Biden administration, the open border insane policies that you've allowed to destroy our country, we will now bring in brilliant, hardworking, job-creating people. They're going to pay a lot of money, and we're going to reduce our debt with that money. Americans have given us a mandate for bold and profound change. For nearly 100 years, the federal bureaucracy has grown until it has crushed our freedoms, ballooned our deficits, and held back America's potential in every possible way. The nation founded by pioneers and risk-takers now drowns under millions and millions of pages of regulations and debt. Approvals that should take 10 days to get instead take 10 years, 15 years, and even 20 years before you're rejected. Meanwhile, we have hundreds of thousands of federal workers who have not been showing up to work. My administration will reclaim power from this unaccountable bureaucracy, and we will restore true democracy to America again. And any federal bureaucrat who resists this change will be removed from office immediately. Because we are draining the swamp. It's very simple. And the days of rule by unelected bureaucrats are over. And the next phase of our plan to deliver the greatest economy in history is for this Congress to pass tax cuts for everybody. They're in there. They're waiting for you to vote. And I'm sure that the people on my right, I don't mean the Republican right, but my right here, I'm sure you're going to vote for those tax cuts, because otherwise I don't believe the people will ever vote you into office. So I'm doing you a big favor by telling you that. But I know this group is going to be voting for the tax. Thank you. It's a very, very big part of our plan. We had tremendous success in our first term with it. A very big part of our plan. We're seeking permanent income tax cuts all across the board. And to get urgently needed relief to Americans hit especially hard by inflation, I'm calling for no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security benefits for our great seniors. And I also want to make interest payments on car loans tax deductible, but only if the car is made in America. And by the way, we're going to have growth in the auto industry like nobody's ever seen. Plants are opening up all over the place. Deals are being made. Never seen. That's a combination of the election win and tariffs. It's a beautiful word, isn't it? That, along with our other policies, will allow our auto industry to absolutely boom. It's going to boom. Spoke to the majors today, all three, the top people, and they're so excited. In fact, already numerous car companies have announced that they will be building massive automobile plants in America, with Honda just announcing a new plant in Indiana, one of the largest anywhere in the world. And this has taken place since our great victory on November 5th, a date which will hopefully go down as one of the most important in the history of our country. In addition, as part of our tax cuts, we want to cut taxes on domestic production and all manufacturing. And just as we did before, we will provide 100% expensing. It will be retroactive to January 20th, 2025. And it was one of the main reasons why our tax cuts were so successful in our first term, giving us the most successful economy in the history of our country, first term. We had a great first term. If you don't make your product in America, however, under the Trump administration, you will pay a tariff, and in some cases, a rather large one. Other countries have used tariffs against us for decades, and now it's our turn to start using them against those other countries. On average, the European Union, China, Brazil, India, Mexico, and Canada, have you heard of them? And countless other nations charge us tremendously higher tariffs than we charge them. It's very unfair. India charges us auto tariffs higher than 100%. China's average tariff on our products is twice what we charge them. And South Korea's average tariff is 4 times higher. Think of that, 4 times higher. And we give so much help militarily and in so many other ways to South Korea, but that's what happens. This is happening by friend and foe. This system is not fair to the United States and never was, and so on April 2nd, I wanted to make it April 1st, but I didn't want to be accused of April Fool's Day. That's not, just one day cost us a lot of money. But we're going to do it in April. I'm a very superstitious person. April 2nd, reciprocal tariffs kick in. And whatever they tariff us, other countries, we will tariff them. That's reciprocal, back and forth. Whatever they tax us, we will tax them. If they do non-monetary tariffs to keep us out of their market, then we will do non-monetary barriers to keep them out of our market. There's a lot of that, too. They don't even allow us in their market. We will take in trillions and trillions of dollars and create jobs like we have never seen before. I did it with China, and I did it with others, and the Biden administration couldn't do anything about it because there was so much money they couldn't do anything about it. We have been ripped off for decades by nearly every country on earth, and we will not let that happen any longer. Much has been said over the last 3 months about Mexico and Canada, but we have very large deficits with both of them. But even more importantly, they've allowed fentanyl to come into our country at levels never seen before, killing hundreds of thousands of our citizens and many very young, beautiful people, destroying families. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. They are, in effect, receiving subsidies of hundreds of billions of dollars. We pay subsidies to Canada and to Mexico of hundreds of billions of dollars, and the United States will not be doing that any longer. We're not going to do it any longer. Thanks to our America First policies we're putting into place, we have had $1.7 trillion of new investment in America in just the past few weeks. The combination of the election and our economic policies that people of SoftBank, one of the most brilliant anywhere in the world, announced a $200 billion investment. OpenAI and Oracle, Larry Ellison, announced $500 billion investment, which they wouldn't have done if Kamala had won. Apple announced $500 billion investment. Tim Cook called me. He said, I cannot spend it fast enough. It's going to be much higher than that, I believe. They'll be building their plants here instead of in China. And just yesterday, Taiwan Semiconductor, the biggest in the world, most powerful in the world, has a tremendous amount, 97% of the market, announced a $165 billion investment to build the most powerful chips on earth right here in the USA. And we're not giving them any money. Your CHIPS Act is a horrible, horrible thing. We give hundreds of billions of dollars, and it doesn't mean a thing. They take our money and they don't spend it. All that meant to them, we're giving them no money. All that was important to them was they didn't want to pay the tariffs, so they came and they're building, and many other companies are coming. We don't have to give them money. We just want to protect our businesses and our people. And they will come because they won't have to pay tariffs if they build in America. So it's very amazing. You should get rid of the CHIP Act, and whatever's left over, Mr. Speaker, you should use it to reduce debt or any other reason you want to. Our new trade policy will also be great for the American farmer. I love the farmer. Who will now be selling into our home market, the USA, because nobody is going to be able to compete with you because there's goods that come in from other countries and companies. They're really in a bad position in so many different ways. They're uninspected. They may be very dirty and disgusting, and they come in and they pour in, and they hurt our American farmers. The tariffs will go on agricultural product coming into America, and our farmers, starting on April 2nd, it may be a little bit of an adjustment period. We had that before when I made the deal with China, $50 billion of purchases, and I said, just bear with me, and they did. They did. Probably have to bear with me again, and this will be even better. That was great. The problem with it was that Biden didn't enforce it. He didn't enforce it. $50 billion of purchases, and we were doing great, but Biden did not enforce it, and it hurt our farmers. But our farmers are going to have a field day right now. So to our farmers, have a lot of fun. I love you too. I love you too. It's all going to happen. And I have also imposed a 25% tariff on foreign aluminum, copper, lumber, and steel, because if we don't have, as an example, steel and lots of other things, we don't have a military, and frankly, we just won't have a country very long. Here today is a proud American steelworker, fantastic person from Decatur, Alabama, Jeff Denard. Has been working at the same steel plant for 27 years in a job that has allowed him to serve as the captain of his local volunteer fire department, raise 7 children with his beautiful wife, Nicole, and over the years provide a loving home for more than 40 foster children. So great, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. Stories like Jeff's remind us that tariffs are not just about protecting American jobs. They're about protecting the soul of our country. Tariffs are about making America rich again and making America great again, and it's happening, and it will happen rather quickly. There'll be a little disturbance, but we're okay with that. It won't be much. No, you're not. Oh. And look where Biden took us, very low, the lowest we've ever been. Jeff, I want to thank you very much. And I also want to recognize another person who has devoted herself to foster care community. She works so hard on it. A very loving person, our magnificent First Lady of the United States. Melania's work has yielded incredible results, helping prepare our nation's future leaders as they enter the workforce. Our First Lady is joined by 2 impressive young women, very impressive. Haley Ferguson, who benefited from the First Lady's Fostering the Future initiative and is poised to complete her education and become a teacher. And Elliston Berry, who became a victim of an illicit deepfake image produced by a peer. With Elliston's help, the Senate just passed the Take It Down Act, and this is so important. Thank you very much, John. John Thune, thank you. Stand up, John. Thank you, John. Thank you all very much. Thank you. And thank you to John Thune and the Senate. Great job. To criminalize the publication of such images online is a terrible, terrible thing. And once it passes the House, I look forward to signing that bill into law. Thank you. And I'm going to use that bill for myself, too, if you don't mind. Because nobody gets treated worse than I do online. Nobody. That's great. Thank you very much to the Senate. Thank you. But if we truly care about protecting Americans' children, no step is more crucial than securing America's borders. Over the past 4 years, 21 million people poured into the United States. Many of them were murderers, human traffickers, gang members, and other criminals from the streets of dangerous cities all throughout the world. Because of Joe Biden's insane and very dangerous open border policies, they are now strongly embedded in our country, but we are getting them out and getting them out fast. And I want to thank Tom Homan and Christy. I want to thank you and Paul of Border Patrol. I want to thank you. What a job they've all done. Everybody, Border Patrol, ICE, law enforcement in general is incredible. We have to take care of our law enforcement. Have to. Last year, a brilliant 22-year-old nursing student named Laken Riley, the best in her class, admired by everybody, went out for a jog on the campus of the University of Georgia. That morning, Laken was viciously attacked, assaulted, beaten, brutalized, and horrifically murdered. Laken was stolen from us by a savage illegal alien gang member who was arrested while trespassing across Biden's open southern border and then set loose into the United States under the heartless policies of that failed administration. It was indeed a failed administration. He had then been arrested and released in a Democrat-run sanctuary city, a disaster, before ending the life of this beautiful young angel. With us this evening are Laken's beloved mother, Allison, and her sister, Lauren. Last year, I told Laken's grieving parents that we would ensure their daughter would not have died in vain. That's why the very first bill I signed into law as your 47th president mandates the detention of all dangerous criminal aliens who threaten public safety. It's a very strong, powerful act. It's called the Laken-Riley Act. So Allison and Lauren, America will never, ever forget our beautiful Laken Hope Riley. Thank you very much. Since taking office, my administration has launched the most sweeping border and immigration crackdown in American history, and we quickly achieved the lowest numbers of illegal border crossers ever recorded. Thank you. The media and our friends in the Democrat Party kept saying we needed new legislation. We must have legislation to secure the border. But it turned out that all we really needed was a new president. Thank you. Joe Biden didn't just open our borders, he flew illegal aliens over them to overwhelm our schools, hospitals, and communities throughout the country. Entire towns like Aurora, Colorado, and Springfield, Ohio, buckled under the weight of the migrant occupation and corruption like nobody's ever seen before. Beautiful towns destroyed. Now, just as I promised in my inaugural address, we are achieving the great liberation of America. But there still is much work to be done. Here tonight is a woman I have gotten to know, Alexis Nungari from Houston. Wonderful woman. Last June, Alexis's 12-year-old daughter, her precious Jocelyn, walked to a nearby convenience store. She was kidnapped, tied up, assaulted for 2 hours under a bridge, and horrifically murdered. Arrested and charged with this heinous crime are 2 illegal alien monsters from Venezuela, released into America by the last administration through their ridiculous open border. The death of this beautiful 12-year-old girl and the agony of her mother and family touched our entire nation greatly. Alexis, I promised that we would always remember your daughter, your magnificent daughter, and earlier tonight, I signed an order keeping my word to you. One thing I have learned about Jocelyn is that she loved animals so much. She loved nature. Across Galveston Bay, from where Jocelyn lived in Houston, you will find a magnificent national wildlife refuge, a pristine, peaceful, 34,000-acre sanctuary for all of God's creatures on the edge of the Gulf of America. Alexis, moments ago, I formally renamed that refuge in loving memory of your beautiful daughter, Jocelyn. So, Mr. Vice President, if you would, may I have the order? Thank you very much. All 3 savages charged with Jocelyn and Lakin's murders were members of the Venezuelan prison gang, the toughest gang, they say, in the world, known as Tren de Aragua. 2 weeks ago, I officially designated this gang, along with MS-13 and the bloodthirsty Mexican drug cartels, as foreign terrorist organizations. They are now officially in the same category as ISIS, and that's not good for them. Countless thousands of these terrorists were welcomed into the U.S. by the Biden administration. But now every last one will be rounded up and forcibly removed from our country, or, if they're too dangerous, put in jails, standing trial in this country, because we don't want them to come back ever. With us this evening is a warrior on the front lines of that battle, Border Patrol Agent Roberto Ortiz. Great guy. In January, Roberto and another agent were patrolling by the Rio Grande near an area known as Cartel Island. Doesn't sound too nice to me. When heavily armed gunmen started shooting at them. Roberto saw that his partner was totally exposed, at great danger, and he leapt into action, returning fire and providing crucial seconds for his fellow agent to seek safety, just barely. I have some of the prints of that event, and it was not good. Agent Ortiz, we salute you for your great courage and for your line of fire that you took and for the bravery that you showed. We honor you, and we will always honor you. Thank you, Roberto, very much. Thank you, Roberto. And I actually got to know him on my many calls to the border. He's a great gentleman. The territory to the immediate south of our border is now dominated entirely by criminal cartels that murder, rape, torture, and exercise total control. They have total control over a whole nation, posing a grave threat to our national security. The cartels are waging war in America, and it's time for America to wage war on the cartels, which we are doing. Five nights ago, Mexican authorities, because of our tariff policies being imposed on them, think of this, handed over to us 29 of the biggest cartel leaders in their country. That has never happened before. They want to make us happy. First time ever. But we need Mexico and Canada to do much more than they've done, and they have to stop the fentanyl and drugs pouring into the USA. They're going to stop it. I have sent Congress a detailed funding request laying out exactly how we will eliminate these threats to protect our homeland and complete the largest deportation operation in American history, larger even than current record holder, President Dwight D. Eisenhower, a moderate man, but someone who believed very strongly in borders. Americans expect Congress to send me this funding without delay so I can sign it into law. So, Mr. Speaker, John Thune, both of you, I hope you're going to be able to do that, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. Mr. Leader, thank you. Thank you very much. And let's get it to me. I'll sign it so fast, you won't even believe it. And as we reclaim our sovereignty, we must also bring back law and order to our cities and towns. In recent years, our justice system has been turned upside down by radical left lunatics. Many jurisdictions virtually ceased enforcing the law against dangerous repeat offenders while weaponizing law enforcement against political opponents like me. My administration has acted swiftly and decisively to restore fair, equal, and impartial justice under the constitutional rule of law, starting at the FBI and the DOJ. Pam, good luck. Cash, wherever you may be, good luck. Good luck. Pam Bondi. Good luck. So important. Going to do a great job. Cash, thank you. Thank you, Cash. They've already started very strong. They're going to do a fantastic job. You're going to be very proud of them. We're also once again giving our police officers the support, protection, and respect they so dearly deserve. They have to get it. They have such a hard, dangerous job, but we're going to make it less dangerous. The problem is the bad guys don't respect the law, but they're starting to respect it, and they soon will respect it. This also also includes our great fire departments throughout the country. Our firemen and women are unbelievable people, and we'll never forget them. And besides that, they voted for me in record numbers, so I have no choice. One year ago this month, 31-year-old New York police officer Jonathan Diller, unbelievably wonderful person and a great officer, was gunned down at a traffic stop on Long Island. I went to his funeral. The vicious criminal charged with his murder had 21 prior arrests, and they were rough arrests, too. He was a real bad one. The thug in the seat next to him had 14 prior arrests and went by the name of Killer. He was Killer. He killed other people, they say, a lot of them. I attended Officer Diller's service, and when I met his wife and one-year-old son, Ryan, it was very inspirational, actually. His widow's name is Stephanie, and she is here tonight. Stephanie, thank you very much, Stephanie. Thank you very much. Stephanie, we're going to make sure that Ryan knows his dad was a true hero, New York's finest, and we're going to get these cold-blooded killers and repeat offenders off our streets, and we're going to do it fast. Got to stop it. They get out with 28 arrests. They push people into subway trains. They hit people over the head, back of the head with baseball bats. We got to get them out of here. I've already signed an executive order requiring a mandatory death penalty for anyone who murders a police officer. And tonight I'm asking Congress to pass that policy into permanent law. I'm also asking for a new crime bill getting tough on repeat offenders while enhancing protections for America's police officers so they can do their jobs without fear of their lives being totally destroyed. They don't want to be killed. We're not going to let them be killed. Joining us in the gallery tonight is a young man who truly loves our police. His name is DJ Daniel. He is 13 years old, and he has always dreamed of becoming a police officer. But in 2018, DJ was diagnosed with brain cancer. The doctors gave him 5 months at most to live. That was more than 6 years ago. Since that time, DJ and his dad have been on a quest to make his dream come true, and DJ has been sworn in as an honorary law enforcement officer, actually a number of times. The police love him, the police departments love him. And tonight, DJ, we're going to do you the biggest honor of them all. I am asking our new Secret Service Director, Sean Curran, to officially make you an agent of the United States Secret Service. Thank you, DJ. DJ's doctors believe his cancer likely came from a chemical he was exposed to when he was younger. Since 1975, rates of child cancer have increased by more than 40%. Reversing this trend is one of the top priorities for our new presidential commission to make America healthy again, chaired by our new Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. With the name Kennedy, you would have thought everybody over here would have been cheering. How quickly they forget. Our goal is to get toxins out of our environment, poisons out of our food supply, and keep our children healthy and strong. As an example, not long ago, and you can't even believe these numbers, 1 in 10,000 children had autism, 1 in 10,000. And now it's 1 in 36. There's something wrong. 1 in 36. Think of that. So we're going to find out what it is, and there's nobody better than Bobby and all of the people that are working with you. You have the best to figure out what is going on. Okay, Bobby? Good luck. It's a very important job. Thank you. Thank you. My administration is also working to protect our children from toxic ideologies in our schools. A few years ago, January Littlejohn and her husband discovered that their daughter's school had secretly socially transitioned their 13-year-old little girl. Teachers and administrators conspired to deceive January and her husband while encouraging her daughter to use a new name and pronouns. They, them pronoun, actually, all without telling January, who is here tonight and is now a courageous advocate against this form of child abuse. January, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Stories like this are why, shortly after taking office, I signed an executive order banning public schools from indoctrinating our children with transgender ideology. I also signed an order to cut off all taxpayer funding to any institution that engages in the sexual mutilation of our youth. And now I want Congress to pass a bill permanently banning and criminalizing sex changes on children and forever ending the lie that any child is trapped in the wrong body. This is a big lie. And our message to every child in America is that you are perfect exactly the way God made you. Because we're getting wokeness out of our schools and out of our military, and it's already out, and it's out of our society. We don't want it. Wokeness is trouble. Wokeness is bad. It's gone. It's gone. And we feel so much better for it, don't we? Don't we feel better? Our service members won't be activists and ideologues. They will be fighters and warriors. They will fight for our country. And Pete, congratulations. Secretary of Defense, congratulations. And he's not big into the woke movement, I can tell you. I know him well. I am pleased to report that in January, the U.S. Army had its single best recruiting month in 15 years, and that all armed services are having among the best recruiting results ever in the history of our services. What a difference. And you know, it was just a few months ago where the results were exactly the opposite. We couldn't recruit anywhere. We couldn't recruit. Now we're having the best results just about that we've ever had. What a tremendous turnaround. It's really a beautiful thing to see. People love our country again. It's very simple. They love our country, and they love being in our military again. So it's a great thing, and thank you very much. Great job. Thank you. We're joined tonight by a young man, Jason Hartley, who knows the weight of that call of duty. Jason's father, grandfather, and great-grandfather all wore the uniform. Jason tragically lost his dad, who was also a Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputy when he was just a boy, and now he wants to carry on the family legacy of service. Jason is a senior in high school, a 6-letter varsity athlete, a really good athlete, they say, a brilliant student with a 4.46, that's good, GPA. And his greatest dream is to attend the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. And Jason, that's a very big deal getting in. That's a hard one to get into. But I'm pleased to inform you that your application has been accepted. You will soon be joining the Corps of Cadets. Thank you. Jason, you're going to be on the long gray line, Jason. As Commander-in-Chief, my focus is on building the most powerful military of the future. As a first step, I'm asking Congress to fund a state-of-the-art Golden Dome missile defense shield to protect our homeland, all made in the USA. And Ronald Reagan wanted to do it long ago, but the technology just wasn't there, not even close. But now we have the technology. It's incredible, actually. And other places, they have it. Israel has it. Other places have it. And the United States should have it too, right, Tim, right? They should have it too. So I want to thank you. But it's a very, very important. This is a very dangerous world. We should have it. We want to be protected, and we're going to protect our citizens like never before. To boost our defense industrial base, we are also going to resurrect the American shipbuilding industry, including commercial shipbuilding and military shipbuilding. And for that purpose, I am announcing tonight that we will create a new Office of Shipbuilding in the White House and offer special tax incentives to bring this industry home to America where it belongs. We used to make so many ships. We don't make them anymore very much, but we're going to make them very fast, very soon. It will have a huge impact. To further enhance our national security, my administration will be reclaiming the Panama Canal, and we've already started doing it. Just today, a large American company announced they are buying both ports around the Panama Canal and lots of other things having to do with the Panama Canal and a couple of other canals. The Panama Canal was built by Americans for Americans, not for others, but others could use it. But it was built at tremendous cost of American blood and treasure. 38,000 workers died building the Panama Canal. They died of malaria. They died of snake bites and mosquitoes. Not a nice place to work. They paid them very highly to go there, knowing there was a 25% chance that they would die. The most expensive project also that was ever built in our country's history, if you bring it up to modern day costs. It was given away by the Carter administration for $1, but that agreement has been violated very severely. We didn't give it to China. We gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back. And we have Marco Rubio in charge. Good luck, Marco. Now, we know who to blame if anything goes wrong. Marco's been amazing, and he's going to do a great job. Think of it, he got 100 votes. You know, he was approved with actually 99, but the 100th was this gentleman, and I feel very certain. So let's assume he got 100 votes. And I'm either very, very happy about that or I'm very concerned about it. But he's already proven. I mean, he's a great gentleman. He's respected by everybody, and we appreciate you voting for Marco. He's going to do a fantastic job. Thank you. Thank you. He's doing a great job. Great job. And I also have a message tonight for the incredible people of Greenland. We strongly support your right to determine your own future. And if you choose, we welcome you into the United States of America. We need Greenland for national security and even international security, and we're working with everybody involved to try and get it. But we need it really for international world security. And I think we're going to get it. One way or the other, we're going to get it. We will keep you safe. We will make you rich, and together we will take Greenland to heights like you have never thought possible before. It's a very small population, but very, very large piece of land and very, very important for military security. America is once again standing strong against the forces of radical Islamic terrorism. 3.5 years ago, ISIS terrorists killed 13 American service members and countless others in the Abbey Gate bombing during the disastrous and incompetent withdrawal from Afghanistan. Not that they were withdrawing, it was the way they withdrew. Perhaps the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. Tonight, I am pleased to announce that we have just apprehended the top terrorist responsible for that atrocity, and he is right now on his way here to face the swift sword of American justice. And I want to thank especially the government of Pakistan for helping arrest this monster. This was a very momentous day for those 13 families who I actually got to know very well, most of them, whose children were murdered, and the many people that were so badly, over 42 people, so badly injured on that fateful day in Afghanistan. What a horrible day. Such incompetence was shown. That when Putin saw what happened, I guess he said, wow, maybe this is my chance. That's how bad it was. Should have never happened. Grossly incompetent people. I spoke to many of the parents and loved ones, and they're all in our hearts tonight. Just spoke to them on the phone. We had a big call Every one of them called, and everybody was on the line, and they did nothing but cry with happiness. They were very happy, as happy as you can be under those circumstances. Their child, brother, sister, son, daughter was killed for no reason whatsoever. In the Middle East, we're bringing back our hostages from Gaza. In my first term, we achieved one of the most groundbreaking peace agreements in generations, the Abraham Accords. And now we're going to build on that foundation to create a more peaceful and prosperous future for the entire region. A lot of things are happening in the Middle East. People have been talking about that so much lately with everything going on with Ukraine and Russia. But a lot of things are happening in the Middle East. It's a rough neighborhood, actually. I'm also working tirelessly to end the savage conflict in Ukraine. Millions of Ukrainians and Russians have been needlessly killed or wounded in this horrific and brutal conflict with no end in sight. The United States has sent hundreds of billions of dollars to support Ukraine's defense with no security, with no anything. Do you want to keep it going for another 5 years? Yeah, you would say Pocahontas says yes. $2,000 people are being killed every single week. More than that. They're Russian young people. They're Ukrainian young people. They're not Americans. But I want it to stop. Meanwhile, Europe has sadly spent more money buying Russian oil and gas than they have spent on defending Ukraine, by far. Think of that. They've spent more buying Russian oil and gas than they have defending. And we've spent perhaps $350 billion, like taking candy from a baby. That's what happened. And they've spent $100 billion. What a difference that is. And we have an ocean separating us, and they don't. But we're getting along very well with them, and lots of good things are happening. Biden has authorized more money in this fight than Europe has spent by billions and billions of dollars. It's hard to believe that they wouldn't have stopped it and said, at some point, come on, let's equalize. You got to be equal to us. But that didn't happen. Earlier today, I received an important letter from President Zelensky of Ukraine. The letter reads, Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible to bring lasting peace closer. Nobody wants peace more than the Ukrainians, he said. My team and I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership to get a peace that lasts. We do really value how much America has done to help Ukraine maintain its sovereignty and independence. Regarding the agreement on minerals and security, Ukraine is ready to sign it at any time that is convenient for you. I appreciate that he sent this letter, just got it a little while ago. Simultaneously, we've had serious discussions with Russia and have received strong signals that they are ready for peace. Wouldn't that be beautiful? Wouldn't that be beautiful? Wouldn't that be beautiful? It's time to stop this madness. It's time to halt the killing. It's time to end this senseless war. If you want to end wars, you have to talk to both sides. Nearly 4 years ago, amid rising tensions, a history teacher named Mark Fogel was detained in Russia and sentenced to 14 years in a penal colony. Rough stuff. The previous administration barely lifted a finger to help him. They knew he was innocent, but they had no idea where to begin. But last summer, I promised his 95-year-old mother, Malphine, that we would bring her boy safely back home. After 22 days in office, I did just that, and they are here tonight. To Mark and his great mom, we are delighted to have you safe and sound and with us. As fate would have it, Mark Fogel was born in a small rural town in Butler, Pennsylvania. Have you heard of it? Where his mother has lived for the past 78 years. I just happened to go there last July 13th for a rally. That was not pleasant. And that is where I met his beautiful mom right before I walked onto that stage. And I told her I would not forget what she said about her son. And I never did I? Never forgot. Less than 10 minutes later, at that same rally, gunfire rang out, and a sick and deranged assassin unloaded 8 bullets from his sniper's perch into a crowd of many thousands of people. My life was saved by a fraction of an inch, but some were not so lucky. Corey Comparator was a firefighter, a veteran, a Christian, a husband, a devoted father, and above all, a protector. When the sound of gunshots pierced the air, it was a horrible sound. Corey knew instantly what it was and what to do. He threw himself on top of his wife and daughters and shielded them from the bullets with his own body. Corey was hit really hard. You know the story from there. He sacrificed his life to save theirs. 2 others, very fine people, were also seriously hit. But thankfully, with the help of 2 great country doctors, we thought they were gone and they were saved. So those doctors had great talent. We're joined by Corey's wife, Helen, who was his high school sweetheart, and their 2 beloved daughters, Allison and Kaylee. Thank you. To Helen, Allison, and Kaylee, Corey is looking down on his 3 beautiful ladies right now, and he is cheering you on. He loves you. He is cheering you on. Corey was taken from us much too soon, but his destiny was to leave us all with a shining example of the selfless devotion of a true American patriot. It was love like Corey's that built our country, and it's love like Corey's that is going to make our country more majestic than ever before. I believe that my life was saved that day in Butler for a very good reason. I was saved by God to make America great again. I believe that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank Thank you very much. From the patriots of Lexington and Concord to the heroes of Gettysburg and Normandy, from the warriors who crossed the Delaware to the trailblazers who climbed the Rockies, and from the legends who soared at Kitty Hawk to the astronauts who touched the moon, Americans have always been the people who defied all odds, transcended all dangers, made the most extraordinary sacrifices, and did whatever it took to defend our children, our country, and our freedom. And as we have seen in this chamber tonight, that same strength, faith, love, and spirit is still alive and thriving in the hearts of the American people. Despite the best efforts of those who would try to censor us, silence us, break us, destroy us, Americans are today a proud, free, sovereign, and independent nation that will always be free, and we will fight for it till death. We will never let anything happen to our beloved country, because we are a country of doers, dreamers, fighters, and survivors. Our ancestors crossed a vast ocean, strode into the unknown wilderness, and carved their fortunes from the rock and soil of a perilous and very dangerous frontier. They chased our destiny across a boundless continent. They built the railroads, laid the highways, and graced the world with American marvels like the Empire State Building, the mighty Hoover Dam, and the towering Golden Gate Bridge. They lit the world with electricity, broke free of the force of gravity, fired up the engines of American industry, vanquished the communists, fascists, and Marxists all over the world, and gave us countless modern wonders sculptured out of iron, glass, and steel. We stand on the shoulders of these pioneers who won and built the modern age, these workers who poured their sweat into the skylines of our cities, these warriors who shed their blood on fields of battle and gave everything they had for our rights and for our freedom. Now it is our time to take up the righteous cause of American liberty, and it is our turn to take America's destiny into our own hands and begin the most thrilling days in the history of our country. This will be our greatest era. With God's help, over the next 4 years, we are going to lead this nation even higher, and we are going to forge the freest, most advanced, most dynamic, and most dominant civilization ever to exist on the face of this earth. We are going to create the highest quality of life, build the safest and wealthiest and healthiest and most vital communities anywhere in the world. We are going to conquer the vast frontiers of science, and we're going to lead humanity into space and plant the American flag on the planet Mars and even far beyond. And through it all, we are going to rediscover the unstoppable power of the American spirit. And we are going to renew unlimited promise of the American dream. Every single day, we will stand up and we will fight, fight, fight for the country our citizens believe in and for the country our people deserve. My fellow Americans, get ready for an incredible future, because the golden age of America has only just begun. It will be like nothing that has ever been seen before. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Great job. Thank you. Great honor. Thank you.
All right, there you have it. Andrew Kraft here now in the anchor chair with some of the recap of what we just heard for a little over an hour and 40 minutes. President Trump touching on so many key focal points that you have heard him discuss throughout the last 43 days, including tariffs, including the illegal immigration crisis, including crime, including the wars between Israel and Hamas and Russia and Ukraine, and so many of these issues that we have heard from President Trump and candidate Trump as well. You see him there greeting members of the Supreme Court, members of his cabinet, senators as well, as he makes his way out of the House chamber there. We're going to keep this shot up because we have joining us now my colleague, Austin Westfall, here in the Live Now newsroom, and our friend there at 24 Site News, Tom LoBianco, who helped us get through the 2024 campaign season here. I'm just going to bring down the audio there on the House floor. I'm going to ask Tom this first. You know, Tom, a lot of these speeches, sometimes they're about, or most times they're about, the theatrics and the showbiz quality and the partisan antics, so to speak, because you can make the argument that this was somewhat of a cookie cutter Trump speech. We've heard him say a lot of these things before, but some of the antics being proffered there by some of these Democrats, I'm talking about Al Green, the Democrat of Texas, who was escorted out of the chamber by the Sergeant at Arms. Does that redound to Democrats in their favor at all? You and I have discussed so much how the Democratic brand right now is in trouble, is in question. Did they do themselves any favors with that tonight, Tom?
Well, remains to be seen, especially with Al Green. Remember that Al Green back in 2017 was the first member of Congress to file articles of impeachment against then President Trump in the first term. So you kind of expect that from somebody like Green. But, it's not unprecedented. A couple of years ago, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert were standing up and, screaming at Biden throughout his speech. And I think that really speaks to the ongoing polarization, really. I mean, this was, an escalation of the polarization that we see in, things where there used to be pretty routine decorum. Something as official as granted, it's not officially a State of the Union, but basically a State of the Union speech.
Tom, there were a few moments, though, and I have been covering and following these types of speeches for a long time, that I have never seen before. One was the president signing, or at least showing, a signed executive order to the audience before him. Hadn't seen that before, but also, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I know you're a student of history, had never seen before the Speaker of the House gavel the chamber into order, or at least try to, pausing the president's speech. I mean, that was very, very different.
Yeah, I mean, look, the escalation all around here is remarkable. I'm pretty sure that was Madeline Stansberry who was holding up that sign as he walked in that said, "This is not normal." He's on the House DOJ subcommittee, the House Oversight Committee. She used to be in the Obama White House as a budget staffer. I mean, there's so many facets of this that were heightened, increased over, what we've seen before. And I think you also have to take that in context of what the first month and a half have been like. I mean, look, for everything that was stated inside the room, there was a lot that was not talked about. You heard the Democrats yelling about the January 6 convicts who were pardoned repeatedly. So everything is incredibly heightened. And this also comes within the context of there's a government shutdown potential. These are all the folks that are going to have to vote on that before March 14th, about, 9 days from now, 10 days from now. So, I mean, the tensions are running incredibly high.
Yeah, and we see the president there about to exit the House chamber right now. We're going to keep these shots up. Remember, we're getting a Democratic rebuttal very, very soon here from Michigan Democratic Senator, the freshman Alyssa Slotkin. So bear with us here. If you are watching, just want to come on camera to introduce everyone who is here, because we know a lot of you have been watching. Myself, Andrew Kraft, Tom Lobianco there with 24 Site News, and Austin Westwell, my colleague here in the Live Now newsroom. Austin, questions for Tom?
You know, we watch so many speeches with you, Tom, and I like to ask this question and take kind of a political science 101 perspective with things. What's the point of, I mean, I'm not going to call it a State of the Union speech. This is not officially a State of the Union speech. But what is the point of a speech to a joint session of Congress, and do we think Trump achieved it today?
Well, you know, you have to look at it, you know, standing back from the, you know, the partisanship of everything. You know, clearly he is the P.T. Barnum of this moment in American politics. I mean, you know, having the guest, the presentation of the guests, Laken Riley family throughout, recognizing her family, the Convertories from Butler, Pennsylvania, the young child who suffering from brain cancer, who he apparently granted, you know, service with the Secret Service. He did a masterful job at that, and he understands. I mean, you know, look, this is someone who talks about a former president and current president now, who talks about an era in American politics when with McKinley. And, you know, it was right after McKinley when we had Teddy Roosevelt, who, you know, crafted the idea of the bully pulpit. And here he is using it incredibly effectively. And now, you know, the thing I'm going to be watching for is how many people tuned in. All right. I saw Live Now numbers look great. You know, I mean, it's like election night almost. So we got to see how much of America tuned in for this. How much does it resonate? And, you know, for the opposition here, for the minority party, for the Democrats, you know, did any of their tactics work as well?
And ultimately, Tom, what we're going to be waiting for next year is the Democrats' official response. So you say that, and we are going to be hearing from the Democrats in a moment here. If I may ask the same question, what's going to be the point of a Democratic rebuttal, and how are they going to be going to be able to accomplish their goal?
Yeah, Democrats really have to chart a way forward here. You know, my 24 Site News colleague and very first 24 Site News intern, Kaylee Clausing, and I have been doing some reporting on the Virginia state elections. That will be the first big test of the national sentiment, you know, in this second Trump term. Filing deadline is coming up very soon for that, for candidates for office across the state. And you have to think that for the Democrats in particular, this is why they picked somebody like Alyssa Slotkin, a moderate, did very well, outperformed Kamala Harris in Michigan, you know, still a key battleground state. I imagine, you know, her former colleague, Abigail Spanberger, is running for governor of Virginia. So I imagine that she's going to be talking to a lot of those voters, potentially disenfranchised moderates. So you have to think that they're going to be talking about economics, talking about things like housing, the cost of groceries, the impacts of tariffs, you know, things that Trump even hinted at, the, you know, temporary pain for farmers. So that's, I'm going to be listening for from Slotkin.
All right, Tom Lobianco, thank you so much for your time. We're waiting for Slotkin. To your point here, we have some pictures there in Statuary Hall, and you can see just the throng of reporters who are trying to get comments from some of these members of Congress here. In the meantime, remember, we promised that we wanted to get reaction from social media. There were quite a few moments that a lot of people were talking about on social media, on X, on Instagram, and other platforms here. Well, my colleague, Christina Evans, she's going to break some of those moments down for me and for us. She joins me. Christina, what were they?
Yeah, Andrew, like we said before this whole thing started, we saw how folks were talking ahead of course, this big night. But it's really interesting to see what happened on social media, as you just said, as the speech was happening live. We were getting some of this reaction. You can see no shortage of reaction, I should say, in particular, but it was certain moments that really stuck out. And as folks have been talking about online, a lot of that centers around the executive order that was made tonight by President Trump. I want to put this up on your screen from Senator Ted Cruz, the Republican from Texas, saying Jocelyn Nungaray will never be forgotten. Justice for Jocelyn. So if you weren't aware, what happened there during the speech, Trump did rename the wildlife refuge there that was formerly named.
All right, and Christina, we are sorry there. We do have Alyssa Slotkin. We have to get out to the Democratic rebuttal. The senator from Michigan. Let's listen.
A lot shorter than what you just watched. I won't take it personally if you've never heard of me. I'm the new senator from the great state of Michigan, where I grew up. I've been in public service my entire life because I happened to be in New York City on 9/11 when the Twin Towers came down. Before the smoke cleared, I knew I wanted to make a life in national security. I was recruited by the CIA and did 3 tours in Iraq alongside the military. In between, I worked at the White House under President Bush and President Obama, 2 very different leaders who both believed that America is exceptional. You can find that same sense of patriotism here in Wyandotte, Michigan, where I'm speaking from tonight. It's a working class town just south of Detroit. President Trump and I both won here in November. It might not seem like it, but plenty of places like this still exist across the United States. Places where people believe that if you work hard and play by the rules, you should do well and your kids should do better. It reminds me of how I grew up. My dad was a lifelong Republican, my mom a lifelong Democrat. But it was never a big deal because we had shared values that were bigger than any one party. We just went through another fraught election season. Americans made it clear that prices are too high and that the government needs to be more responsive to their needs. America wants change, but there's a responsible way to make change and a reckless way. And we can make that change without forgetting who we are as a country and as a democracy. So that's what I'm going to lay out tonight. Because whether you're from Wyandotte or Wichita, most Americans share 3 core beliefs: that the middle class is the engine of our country, that strong national security protects us from harm, and that our democracy, no matter how messy, is unparalleled and worth fighting for. Let's start with the economy. Michigan literally invented the middle class, the revolutionary idea that you could work at an auto plant and afford the car you were building. That's the American dream. And in order to expand and protect the middle class, we have to do a few basic things. We need to bring down the price of things we spend the most money on: groceries, housing, healthcare. We need to make more things in America with good-paying union jobs and bring our supply chains back home from places like China. We need to give